SOAL Night Live, number 22, with my good friend, Andre Chumley. And without further ado, can you hear me? Anyway, SOAL Night Live, number 22, with my good friend, Andre Chumley.
Hey, what's
hey,
up?
How are you?
I'm doing all right, bud. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm doing pretty good. Can you hear me?
You know, in these times, that question,
it's a loaded question. I know.
But my quick answer is, you know what? A roof, food in my belly, that's more than a lot of people can say. And trying to, manage. Yeah.
I'm just enjoying the finer things like running water and electricity.
One of the things about me that some people know and some people don't, and I appreciate you bringing me on the show because I love checking it out when I can. It's always great, really interesting people, and I love the conversation. But one of the things people might not know is I was born in the third world. I was born in British Guyana, South America, and so but I lived from 0 to 5 months, 5 years old in Chicago. So that's where I learned to speak and read and understand reality. But I lived back in South America from about age 5 to 11, and I give thanks for it every day. And I lived in Jamaica for a while, lived in Trinidad for a while, because in those countries, you have blackouts all the time. 5 days, 7, 9 days. You have water that goes out. And they tell you, they're like, you know what? There's no water 13th to the 19th. Sorry. And so you end up with a psychological thing where you're oil. Sorry, no cooking oil on the first 10 days of next month. Something happened and the boat was messed up. So you end up with this real appreciation, like you just said, running water and the basics. So I give thanks for that kind of Boy Scout training. Yeah.
I don't take anything for granted anymore. So,
yeah.
Although I've been, kind of giving thanks for that for many years anyway.
Well, that's the thing.
It's just you realize how fragile the balance of everything in this world is.
Yes.
And how easily it could be upset. So it's kind
that's
of
right.
Like just taking a hot shower, going, thank you.
and fragile. And with that, we have our first Prague reference for those playing Prague bingo at home.
I don't want to suggest we're close to the edge of anything in particular, but
because the two of us, we're between us, it's going to be Prague bingo tonight. So
yeah. Well, we love all kinds of music.
That's true. Yeah,
man can't live on Prague alone, but it's a big part of the diet.
That's true. And you know what? I got to be careful when I say Prague. I think like you, I mean the more Steven Wilson version of that word. So it might mean all kinds of records. For me, Prague means wow, anything that pushes envelopes. But yeah, we'll talk about.
It's a pretty wide wheelhouse,
Yeah, but
it's not just the symphonic stuff that
exactly
from the 70s.
Yeah, I have that Steven Wilson definition where it includes Aphex Twin or whatever, some weird.
He's got a mixture definitely.
Yeah. Some
so how you been spending your days lately?
Well, I'm here in my studio a lot. It's been great, because one thing is I tour a lot, as you know that. Some people know that. And those who don't know me, I have it all. I'm known as Guitar Tour in all my social media. So go to guitartour.net or find me on Instagram or Twitter as @GuitarTour. And that talks about what I do. So people that don't know, for a quick introduction, I tour and I work with a lot of artists. My main artist these days is Steve Howe, and yes. So I'm never home in April, May, June, July, and most of August. For over a decade, I'm never home. So that's been great to see the spring in where I live and to see green things growing. It's fascinating because usually I leave in the winter and come back in August and it's green and stuff is all grown up. And so that's been fascinating, just to go out with the dog pre-dawn, hear the birds, so I give thanks every day. So that's been a daily thing, is a lot of outdoor time. We sit on the porch, just really give thanks and look at we're growing some herbs and some vegetables on the back. So that's a part of the day, but a big chunk of the day is in the studio, cleaning up, refurbishing, doing some feng shui, getting rid of old crap. and plugging everything in and making sure everything that I have still works and is all going to a mixing board. So I've been, just experimenting a lot, recording a lot. I'm sitting right here. I mean, so, my mixing board and my modular stuff is right here, so that I perform from here, doing a lot of performances. People on my Facebook can see that. Teaching a little bit, got a couple guitar students, one bass student, and one basic synthesis student. Okay. So I'm trying to put together a new economy, and then I'm doing, as you know, similar to you, doing like an interview series where I'm interviewing artists and
tell folks about that.
Yeah, doing it, a little differently. I love this live by the seat of your pants kind of approach. I'm using that for something else that I'll talk about. But I'm doing these interviews with some people I know, some people I've worked with, some people I just ran into. It's called Guitar Tour Interview Series, and it's available on my YouTube, which is just my name. If you punch in my name, if you can't spell my name, there it is, somewhere here. And I've posted so far the Michael Shreve interview. He's the original drummer in Santana.
Oh yeah.
On the first 6 albums. But also, and what I focused on is, because he's heard a million questions. What was Woodstock like?
Oh right. Was the acid really brown?
What's Carlos like? So I try to steer away from those questions that we've all heard. So we talked a lot about his own band, Automatic Man, that he founded after Santana with Pat Thrall and Bayate Todd Cochran. We talked about Go, which is the wonderful band he was in with Stomo Yamashita. What a band, you remember that band with Steve Winwood?
I remember the name.
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect band for you, man. You're such a musicologist. So Go, which is sadly not as known as it should be. Everyone should Google Red Buddha Theater. That's this guy's music before this. His name is Stomo Yamashita, and it's phonetic sounds. It's like Yamashta, Stomo Yamashita, and the group was Go, which I think means loud noise in Japanese or something like that. Anyway, check out the crappy lineup. Michael Shreve, Steve Winwood, Klaus Schultz from Tangerine Dream, Al Di Meola, this guy, Stomo Yamashita, and about 5 other people. Pat Thrall was there for a while. I'm sadly forgetting a few people, but wow, what a band!
This is sounding more familiar as you tell me the lineup.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's kind of one of those things that went down the rabbit hole. But anyway, we talked about those things. I just interviewed Pat Mastelato. That's going to be in a couple of days, and then I interviewed a guy named Les Fradkin. That's going to go up in a couple of days. He's not as well known, but he's very well known as a guitar synth guy. Pioneered a lot of that. And then I just interviewed, this was very exciting. This also goes up. I'm editing all day today and putting some stuff up soon. The great Steve Hunter.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, who some people would know. His quick bio is he played with Mitch Ryder's Detroit, and then he was on Lou Reed's Berlin.
Right, and then he's Alice Cooper.
And then a string of Alice Cooper albums, those great mid-'70s, Walk Into My Nightmare, Lace and Whiskey, all those, Goes to Hell, Cooper Live. But then he came back and played with Cooper 2011, 2016. So he's got a great set of stories and a long history. And one of the more influential guitarists, one of the things he told me, just as a preview, is that the Alice Cooper guys used to come see Mitch Ryder's Detroit play. So think about that. So that means, the guys in Alice Cooper band, Mike Bruce and Glenn Buxton used to watch him. And then, so my head exploded because Alice Cooper band influenced everyone.
Right. And then next thing you know, he's in their band. And
plays on some of the most influential records. Yeah. He plays, of course, the epic, one of the most, if we did a quiz for most famous intro in prog music, the beginning of Salisbury Hill has got to be a candidate, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's Steve Hunter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's on the whole first Gabriel album. So fascinating guy. I'm doing all these interviews with people like that and a bunch of others coming up. So that's on my YouTube and my Facebook. So that's kind of, I'm just making lemonade with lemons, bro. Touring is gone. And that's my life. That's been my life for 25 years. And I'm just I've switched careers a bunch of times, and I'm just taking the attitude that, you know what? This may be for the foreseeable. I can't wait till April to pay my bills. So, between what little bit we eke out from unemployment and stuff, but I got to start coming up with some other things. So that's kind of where I am.
I hear you. Well, I'm kind of at a crossroads myself, and I spent the past 13 years selling T-shirts and
Right.
doing swag and apparel, and that wasn't really a business I was like dying to go into. I just kind of stumbled into it, and it works for me. But honestly, I'm kind of glad that it, something got me out of it. I mean, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I just know that I want to follow my passions and not get stuck in another job with a bunch of faceless people that I don't care about.
Yeah.
Now, I had a few friends there too, but I didn't really, it wasn't really my crew. You know what I mean?
Sure. You didn't connect. Yeah.
Everybody's more interested in who's on The Bachelor that week or some shit like that. And it's like, meanwhile, I'm like, hey, I just played XTC on Spotify. You hear that up there? Yeah. That's good. Trust me.
Whatever.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I'm looking.
Most people, in other words. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, I know. It's typical. My taste is not, not the typical stuff, but thank goodness.
No, it's
yeah. So
XTC, well, we can jump all around the place, but XTC, funny talking about them with some friends earlier, and one of my favorite bands, and I was a Charter fan. I remember being about 13 and listening to like an alternative FM station, or New York area where I lived. Life Begins at the Hop.
Oh yeah.
Radio, and that was, and because that actually came out as a single before Nigel. It was,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I think the story of the Nigel, that was kind of accidental.
Yeah, I think that wasn't that kind of like tacked on at the last minute sort of thing.
It was, and where they lucked out, because in the lyrics it talks about this guy, and he's got a blue collar job, and he's working in British Steel, right?
Right.
And there was a British Steel strike right then. Did you know that? Yeah, you can look that story up from Andy or Colin Moulding. Yes, the song came out, and there was this massive strike of the British Steel. So all of a sudden there's this song on the radio talking about this blue collar guy. He works hard. Nigel, he's working at the British Steel. The song. So that's a big part of why that became a hit.
Wow. So, I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, love those guys. And as a lot of you know, Pat Mastelotto played on Oranges and Lemons.
Yeah, and that's a great album. That's one of my favorites.
So good, know, and but yeah, great band. I love your list of albums before I was listening before I came on. And
oh, thanks.
Oh man, so many of my favorite records. The Parsons record and the Phil Manzanera record. Love that. The Metheny First Circle. I saw that tour at Rutgers University. I was first time seeing Pat Metheny, and I remember anyone who saw this tour remembers they had the stage set up, and all of a sudden you heard these snare drums and trumpets. That opening piece, I guess, on the it's like a Sousa march kind of a thing, and you're looking around, and there comes the band walking from backstage, wireless, horns and tambourines and things, and they walk onto stage and then they start playing. So I remember that, but and also you referenced his guitar synth, which he still plays it. He started on Off Ramp and he's never ever stopped. I mean, I
really think that sounds identified with Pat more than anybody else at this point.
Oh, come on.
It's his sound,
You can't use that. And it's the same GR300 patch. How long are we talking here, right? 30?
Yeah, since what?
32 years.
81-ish, 1 or 2?
82 or something.
The same guitar, it's like
same guitar. So, but then you mentioned Dolby Flat Earth. Oh man, I love that album. That's just a timeless record. I wore that record out back in '84, whatever. To Face the Music, huge Utopia fan, as you know, and like as you so aptly described it, that one just cleverly nods at the Beatles.
Right. It never like that one where it's like fixing a hole. There's this staccato tink 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 octave thing, and then every once in a while they have this da 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 kind of thing.
No.
But the rest of the song doesn't tie into it at all. But it's just like little phrasing things are enough to clue you.
That's it. And it's the kind of record that if you're teaching music, it's a good one to teach how musical DNA works. You know, how the kind of chord progressions of Beatles, or the timbres they used, or the suspensions they used. It's a real good way to show that, look, you can take these things and move them
You
around.
get close, but you can use these things without ripping people off. You know.
That's it. That's
Right.
it. So, but no, beautiful list of stuff. And but what it reminded me, because I think most of those were used, right, except for the Gentle Giant.
Yeah, the only ones were new were the Gentle Giant.
Yeah, which I love. I've lived on used records.
Yeah, it's almost like any excuse to buy those again is good with me.
Of course. but it made me, just because I like to start trouble, it made me a note to throw out to the audience, because I know the prog audience, there's such a split, and you've already mentioned this company. So, but I want to remind people, especially, and I hope we talk about this, especially with this Daniel Ek comment and the debate going on. I want to remind prog fans, when you buy used albums, the artist gets even less than Spotify pays them.
This is true.
How about that?
It is
Zero. So just remember that, folks. You know, because we all go buy used records, and we kind of walk out of that record store feeling like, yeah, I'm supporting the right people. You are.
Well, I mean, they got paid the first time around.
That's right. But of course they did.
But there's no way to get them anything down the road.
That's it. And exactly. But I'm just addressing that we do tend to walk out of a record store a little chuffed today, feeling like,
you got a good point there. And, you know, a lot of my motivation is finding things that maybe are out of print or hard to find.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's kind of half the deal. It's like I've got 1,000 CDs here, but I'm deliberately buying things I don't have on CD.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just throw it out there though, because my whole thing on the Spotify thing is.
Oh yeah, Spotify is scum. I mean,
it's a mixed bag. If they're scum, then Amazon is more scum, because they pay artists even less. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised.
Well, this is the thing. We have to have a fact-based discussion, and we don't. It's an emotional discussion, and I'd love to have they're problematic. There's lots of gray area, but what I don't like is the binary kind of thing, because if you're standing up for artists and you're altruistic about artists, then stop using Amazon, because Amazon pays less per stream, and Jeff Bezos pays no taxes.
Right. And
the grandstanding is what.
And Spotify's been in the news a lot this week with the.
Yeah, that's why I bring them up, because I'm fascinated by this discussion.
Right. What do they get right now? They don't even get a penny a stream. I mean, it's like a third of a penny or some shit like that.
Well, let's go right into it. What's a stream worth? It's a new concept on planet Earth. So really, we're kind of starting from nowhere. The closest comparison we have is what we had for 50 or 60 or 70 years. You know, we had free wireless streaming for decades. It's called radio.
Right.
Think about it. You had a little radio. You turned it on. It was free. What came into it? It was wireless, and it was monetized. You sat through the ads. The radio station collected the money. A big conglomerate that owned 75 stations collected the money. Yes, there's ASCAP, BMI. Some of that money trickled into, of course, there was some. And also, of course, it was a time when those records promoted your concert that was coming through town, right? Or it got us to go down to Sam Goody or Tower and buy something, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not saying it's exactly the same.
No.
Please, people shouldn't attack me on that. They were going to attack me anyway. But I'm saying it's analogous. We had free wireless streaming. We stuck cassettes into our little boxes, and we stole the music off the air, and we didn't care. And sometimes we bought the album, sometimes we didn't. Right?
Yeah.
But
kind of depends on the person too, and how they're wired. You know, for me, I never really felt like I owned it until I bought it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I still feel like that. You know, downloading an MP3 is not owning it. You know, it's like
me either. I'm not a download guy.
You're getting only part of the picture. You know?
Yeah.
You know, and it's about all this kind of stuff. You know,
sure.
You know, it's just
sure. That's also all on the internet, and I can read those credits on the internet. I have something like 12 or 13,000 CDs.
Wow.
I went crazy from 1990 till a few years ago. So my conscience is clear. I've spent a small fortune. I made a lot more money in 95 to 05, and I really bought a lot of CDs. So my conscience is clear. But it brings up the second unanswered question that no one answers about Spotify. If 95% of the stuff I hit play on are records I bought already, right? Who do I owe money to? If I bought something on cassette and LP and CD, which is a lot of stuff, and I think you too.
Yeah, and it's happened. There's certain albums we bought
2-3 times.
You know,
sometimes twice on CD when they put out the 25-year. So my question:
been at Barnes and Noble and seen something like a Yes album for $5, and you're like, screw it, I already got it, but I can't find it right now, so I'll just buy another one.
So a very serious question for people is, so who do I owe money to when I hit play on that Thin Lizzy or that Pink Floyd or that Grover Washington record, whatever you want? If I've bought it a number of times. So see what I'm saying? There's a lot of gray moving parts here. And I just want people to maybe step back and especially the Amazon thing. They're so viciously mad at Spotify. Everyone's using Amazon every day. I
have never used them. I don't have.
You don't. But you know what I'm saying? Statistically.
Yeah, I know.
Most people
I know. It's the first place people look.
Yeah, I actually don't. Either once in a blue moon, I just don't consume that much. But
if I'm going to buy records, I'll just buy them directly from some of our preferred vendors, Wayside, Laser's Edge, guys like that. Burning Shed.
That's what I advocate, and of course,
Bandcamp. And of course, Bandcamp. Bandcamp is like the one legit place that isn't totally screwing people. So
huge fan. Right. So, and let's be clear about that. I want people to support the artist. I'm just saying, stop yearning for this system that screwed the artist. Right? Back when we bought records, artists got $1.
Just the way music has been devalued in the past 20 years is beyond reproach.
Again, I'm an outlier on that. I don't think it's been devalued. I'm in the concert business, and people spend.
Well, I just think there's a whole generation that thinks it's, quote, stupid to pay for music, and that's a bad thing to allow to happen.
I think. Well, let's talk about that. I think again, I travel a lot. I work on 5 continents. And I see young people lining up and paying money for the music, buying the T-shirts, buying the CDs on the way out in Argentina, in Israel, in Japan, in Australia, in the Czech Republic. So that's always a problematic blanket statement for me, because they are spending the money. And we can Google. Anyone can go look right now at the YouTubes of Tune Yards or Bent Knee, or any of the or Snarky Puppy, or any of the 10 projects around Snarky Puppy. Nothing but young people, and they buy that stuff. Can I curse on here? Can I say shit?
It's after 10.
It's after. They buy stuff on vinyl. They buy the merch. They buy the tickets. So, that's a tough one for me. I don't think.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
it's. I think.
And I wonder if maybe progressive music has more thoughtful and mindful fans when it comes to this sort of thing, rather than your disposable pop music fan out there.
Well, we think we are, and that's a whole can of worms.
I'm not saying that makes them any better, but I'm just saying that maybe
they will. Yeah.
Their thought process is a little more artistically.
Well, yeah, some yes, some no. And again, I'm writing a book right now about my 25 years of touring, and one of the things I reflect on is, I'll say there's a spectrum of prog rock fans. Yes, absolutely. A lot of them, you and me.
Right. And they're not all alike. I mean, that's
it.
It's a wide wheelhouse. And, progressive music, it kind of proved it too. It's like,
that's it.
When I started that place 20 years ago, I really naively thought I could somehow unite everybody and bring them together in some kind of happy little utopia.
Yeah.
And after a few years, I realized it wasn't really going to be quite like that. Although everyone can learn to coexist, but it's kind of like, there's different kinds. There's like the fans of the more progressive or commercial stuff often aren't interested in the more pungent strains, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like you don't usually listen to Spock's Beard and chase it with the Henry Cow album.
Yeah.
And it's like these two will never meet in the middle, but they can kind of wave to each other from the sidelines. And that's kind of how it became.
That's it.
I think, you know,
No,
and
absolutely. And I spent, as you know, it's probably where we met. I met you 15 years ago
hey, at least,
or at the gigs. You came to Project Object early on.
yeah, I think that's where I first saw you.
But
I
but
mean,
the
I think I kind
progression,
of got to know you pretty well at Nearfest, you know, just
Nearfest, yeah, yeah,
time backstage to
yeah,
chat more than usual.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the
Then when you were
progressive,
living down here in Atlanta.
yeah, exactly. But the progressive fan thing, it's eternally interesting, and I think there's a couple types of them. And again, some of them are, well, they're like jazz fans. Some of them are really open-minded, and to them, jazz includes Pat Metheny and Snarky Puppy and Bill Frisell and something on the outside. But to a lot of jazz fans, no.
That's
It's
right.
Miles and Coltrane. Miles before 1968. They won't even go to
All right. Oh yeah. It's
pre-Bitches Brew. So I think there's a lot of prog fans that for them it's Floyd, yes, Jethro Tull. I know
yes.
prog fans where Gentle China's too weird,
I I I played
right?
some recently, just
Yeah.
because we were talking
So
about them a lot. And friends
yeah,
were like, send me some links, and they're like, that's pretty wild stuff, man. I don't know.
yeah, I know. So I'm very much. I'm so glad he came along because I love Porcupine Tree, and she's just one of my favorite artists in so many philosophical ways. Um, is Stephen Wilson, and I, I refer to his continual commentary in this area. He's always pointing out that, because he gets so many attacks as soon as he does something different. People are like, well, what happened? I thought you were progressive. And he's like, wow, I just progressed from last year.
Yeah, I see a strong thread that runs through his entire catalog.
Sure.
Everybody's like, oh, it's a pop this time. It's like, didn't you hear piano lessons 15 years ago?
Yeah.
It's not like he just suddenly decided, I'm going to go pop and screw you prog people.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't like that. At least I
Yeah.
don't think it was. I think he sometimes gets a little tired of the over analytical quality of prog fans,
Yes.
as
Yes.
I think we all do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It gets funny.
I
Yeah.
mean, I love them, but damn.
Sure. Absolutely. I do. And some of my best friends I've met in the prog community, absolutely, some great friends. I love going on the cruise, and I've met so many people on the cruise. But there's definitely a line there of people who yeah, if it doesn't sound enough like yes, it's not prog. And
Right. And then there's another side that's going, don't spend your whole life listening to the same stuff, It's
well,
like,
yeah,
so I don't
that's
know.
what I try to do.
Yeah, it's kind of for me. It's like I'm, always hoping to run across something that excites me as much as Close to the Edge did when I was 14. And I feel like these moments are few and far between as we get older, but I
Yeah.
cherish them all the more when they do come along.
Yes, and they're there. And what I love about the trade-off of today is there's a global market. I mean, so again, I have friends in all those countries I mentioned where you get links and you go, wow, what a great band from Germany or South Africa or Nigeria. I was watching some electronic guy in Nigeria the other day. Whatever, Argentina, Australia, Indonesia. Moonjune's bringing all those great Indonesian artists. Have you had him on your show?
Who?
Moonjune, Leonardo Pavkovic?
Not yet, man, but I'd love to. I
Yeah.
saw a picture of him having lunch with Derek today,
Yeah.
sitting there with the gentle giant unburied treasure box. Have you seen that thing?
Right. I saw a picture, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to get my hands on one of those, but that was a limited run. I think they only made 1,000 and they're all gone. So
Right. But
you're lucky if you got one.
you are lucky. That whole movement, though, which he's a part of Indian musicians and Indonesian musicians, I think it's great. I think we need to acknowledge that's another thing too. That means that the market changes. If there's a global market, if there's more people producing this raw material that we're selling, this is the other funny thing about musicians. It's a commodity because we're selling it. We can't have it both ways. If we want good commerce and to be paid properly, then we're selling something, correct?
Right.
I'm not demeaning music. Music's my life. It's my entire existence. It's the most precious, sacred thing in my existence. I'm not at all saying, but I'm saying if we're selling it, then it's subject to economic laws.
Right.
And the first law of economics, I remember from the one economics course I took, first or second or something, is supply and demand. So if the supply of music has gone up 1,000,000-fold, literally,
is demand going to catch up? And
well, that's one thing, but certainly the value. Again, back to your idea of, is it devalued? I don't think it's so much devalued, more than there's a supply that's now different. Because now people in Buenos Aires, if you lived in Buenos Aires in 1989, most of what you consumed, if you liked interesting, edgy music, came from England and America, and you waited for it as an import, correct?
Right.
And you spent a lot of money in Argentinian dollars or Tel Aviv dollars or Kinshasa dollars or whatever. The centers of music were the USA and UK. What we have to understand as musicians is suddenly people can create music locally in all those places. So there's now 1,000 progressive rock and jazz and ambient and electronic and noise and disco and hip hop and bluegrass musicians in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Santiago, Chile, and Melbourne, Australia. We have to understand that. And we got to understand that it's so easy to point fingers and say, oh, it's streaming. No, it's also an incalculable increase in supply.
Right, and you're all connected to it, you know. It's like,
that's the other thing.
There's this whole world just at your fingertips now.
That's it.
You know,
that's it. We live. Yeah, you nailed it, man. If that, so right now, if some friend of mine pings me and says, check this guitarist out from Dublin, I can go click, 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 and be watching it.
Right, and that's
if they're badass, I'm gonna go to their Instagram, and I'm gonna start following that badass guitarist from Dublin. We need to understand that that couldn't happen in 1989. We got to stop wishing it's 1989.
Fair enough.
Although I know.
It had its moments, but
yeah. Oh, I loved it. 1989 was awesome.
Yeah, it did. Excellent. Well, while we're going back in time, I thought maybe we'd go back to some of your earliest musical memories. What are some of, like, before you could even buy records yourself, what were some of your favorite songs or that you heard around the house? Or
Sure. Just talking about this the other day, and it's a great memory for me because again, I grew up in Chicago as a baby. So my dad was in college at Illinois Institute of Technology. So this is 66, 7, 8, 9. So what a beautiful time for music. So I remember one of the first things I remember, and it's part of my DNA, is Marvin Gaye, What's Going On.
Oh, amazing.
Wow. That record, I mean, and oh, mercy, mercy me. The ecology, the word ecology. I remember you just heard that word and you were learning how to speak at 3 or 4. The word ecology came into my brain. Maybe that's why I'm such an environmentalist later on. But that record, and then Simon and Garfunkel, Sounds of Silence, all those.
Love them. You got it right here.
That's it. My dad and my mom. The Shadows, who is unsung, the English band The Shadows.
Sure, Hank Marvin,
Oh, man.
He was made everybody want a red Stratocaster.
Influenced everyone. I'm always surprised how many prog fans, in fact, don't know The Shadows, because you wouldn't have.
Well, everybody thinks of the Ventures, they're kind of their American counterpart, this kind of cowboy Western meets surf music.
Shadows, people. Yeah. Go look at The Shadows. And most of them are still alive, I think. But so that was some stuff. And it's funny, I was talking to my other half, Robin, before about how I'm kind of a charter hip hop fan, because around 69 or 70, one of the records, I was just 1970, so I learned how to put a record on the.
Me too. I think we might be the same age. Are you born in 67?
65.
Okay, so you've got a couple
close.
years.
Yeah, same generation.
But yeah, that was my first thing I learned how to do.
Yeah, exactly.
A record player,
And like you, I just loved music, the sound of music. So one of the first records I remember putting on was Hot Buttered Soul by Isaac Hayes. Oh. That's another one that's incredible. But a group called, and this is the hip hop connection, called The Last Poets. Have you heard of them?
I don't think so.
Go down a rabbit hole there, because The Last Poets are proto hip hop. They came around just around the time of maybe Gil Scott-Heron, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, right? You know that? Mm-hmm. And in the same way that track is kind of proto hip hop. You know, it's this spoken rhythm over a repeated, dun, 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 you know, and Can took a lot from Gilson and Heron, actually, that vibe. But the Last Poets were like over congas and bongos, and they're saying this heavy political stuff. Wow, Watts riots and police brutality and all these things. So it's stark to go back and listen to them because they're talking about let's fund poor black areas. Let's stop the police from stepping on our necks. Let's get Vietnam over with. It's mind-blowing. And again, 5 years old, I'm reading this stuff. Don't really understand it. I know these are naughty words because there's some N words and F words and S words and B words. But that's an early one. So that's a collection of some of the early stuff. So again, incredibly diverse, I think, looking back. Bobby Goldsboro, that was another guy my dad liked. You know him?
I know the name. I know it sounds like something my mom would listen to.
Yeah, totally. Cheeseball, kind of Midwestern pop. God didn't make little green apples.
Oh, that song. Gosh, yes. Okay.
It happens in the summertime. Yeah.
It sounds like it's ripe to be redone by the Ray Conniff Singers.
Totally. But, you know, I love
50s harmony.
I loved it. So those are some early memories. And then jump ahead a few years. My dad took me to a movie about 50s rock and roll. And it had all the people in it, Jerry Lee and Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Bill Haley. And I just sat in that movie theater going like, wow. And so that and the Shadows made me want to love a guitar. And I finally started playing guitar pretty late at 17 or 18 years old.
Me too.
So that's kind of
I was into horns and stuff in high school, and I just figured there wasn't a whole big future for that. I figured the guitar had a lot more applications, and I also thought, you know, it's gonna take a few years to get my shit together. This would be a good instrument to play alone.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
you learned horn?
Yeah. I come from a family of wind players. Actually, I'll show you a picture here. Hold on a second.
That's awesome. That explains a little bit of your love for Chicago.
Oh yeah. Well, it was like something in my blood. You know, my older brother's 16 years my senior.
Okay.
And was, you know, it was 1969. He was bringing home everything that was new at the time. Abbey Road, Chicago One. Right. That Blood, Sweat, and Tears album, you know, the one with the kind of faded maroon to white cover, the biggie with Spinning Wheel.
The big one, yeah, Spinning Wheel, yeah.
And I just love those. So yeah, and actually, here's a couple pictures. My great grandfather was a band director in the late 1800s.
Wow, look at that.
In Leavenworth, Kansas.
That's great.
And so amazingly, I found pictures on the Kansas Historical Society site of his different lineups. So I'm looking at pictures of him standing there with 20 guys behind him 100 years ago. He was born 100 years before me. And everybody in his family was a musician, all his kids. And my great-grandfather was a flautist and had his own big band.
Eddie Tonar.
Yeah. Wow. I have that. That's a crushed red velvet banner, and I have it rolled up in the closet, actually.
You're kidding me.
Kid you not. I have it all.
That's awesome. You gotta do a replicate of that picture someday with a band of yours.
I thought about it, you know, somehow, or maybe this one. You know, it was kind of funny. I was
right, with your guitar or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah, or just kind of like have my band all dress up in this period in tuxes, and y'all have a big hollow body, and you know.
Love it.
Yeah, so I have thought about doing that. It's funny. I was talking to Valor Trucks a few weeks ago, and you know he's on the cover.
A bit of that.
Yeah, he's on the cover of Brothers and Sisters. But I said, did you ever consider recreating that for like a solo album? And he's like, no. He said, about the closest I got is in college. We did a gig with my band, and I put on the picture from Brothers and Sisters that said, "Have you seen me lately?" Well,
that's great. That's a good.
Come see me. So
that's good. Now he's that would be Derek Truck's cousin, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
His dad is Butch, the drummer from the Allman Brothers.
Sure.
So
that's you know, we could jump around and talk about some touring
terribly
stuff.
Talented family.
Want to do that. Absolutely, but that's one of my that's one of my favorite people that I worked for, Derek Trucks. He, you know.
Oh yeah,
I think you've met him around town. Yeah.
I've seen him. I haven't actually met him, but I saw him open for somebody at the Variety Playhouse, God, probably 20 years ago now.
Okay.
I can't remember. It was his early band that he had before he met Susan.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Which was a little more psychedelic, a little more jammy, you know. So yeah, great stuff.
Great guy. Yeah.
So how about some early concerts? Like, what are some of your
early concerts? It's funny because I've been just not on Facebook that much lately. But I was the other day. I jumped on and I happened to see your thing about 50 concerts or something.
Oh yeah, I copied that from somebody, but it got me thinking. You know?
Yeah, I thought, oh, this is fun. Let's for 10 minutes just randomly. Let's see. Wow. Oh yeah, but early concerts. Well, the first concert I went to, like, I saw a few bands around at the bowling alley or something as a kid in Hazlitt, New Jersey, where I grew up. When I came back to the States, lived in Brooklyn for a while, and then Hazlitt, New Jersey, and Jersey in general for 30 years. So I'd see a few bands, but my very first concert, like buying a ticket and going into an arena, 14 years old, I still can't believe I pulled it off. My mom let me go on the train alone at 14. I mean, the shit we did, right?
Right.
You see all those memes about drinking from the garden hose and all that, riding without helmets. We did all that, but my mom let me go to Madison Square Garden, age 14. So I saw AC/DC with Bon Scott. That was my first concert.
That's awesome.
And it was opening for Ted Nugent, who I loved. And he's Ted Nugent. He's now gone way off the scale. But even then, I have to say, it's funny because I remember getting the tour program because they were $5. And even then, 1979, he was a guy who was off the grid. He hunted for his own meat. He lived on a farm. He was very anti-commercial. So it's interesting how that evolved. But that was my first show. And then I saw Kiss, also in 79, which was all the 4 original guys. Then I saw just a variety of stuff. I saw Alice Cooper pretty early on, 1981. I saw a lot of hard rock. I'm a hard rocker. Here's one of the rare ones I saw. I always get fellow punk rockers jealous of this. I saw the Plasmatics.
Oh wow!
You know them?
Yeah, duct tape and all.
People need to, and in a way, in my definition, kind of progressive.
Definitely nothing quite like them at the time.
That's what I'm saying, bro. You're with me, and I see your collection. You have those great discussions of single albums, and some of it is not, quote unquote, in that. But it's you always put something up that asked the question at that moment in time, that pushed an envelope, and I appreciate that. So the Plasmatics, yeah, I mean, wow, they just blew open so many doors, literally and figuratively. People, if you don't know the Plasmatics, just go punch in, NBC Plasmatics.
Well, their amazing front woman, Wendy O. Williams, was one of a kind with her rooster. Wow. They call that hairdo
a mohawk.
Mohawk, yeah, of course.
Well, there was her, and there I was at 16, and there's a DVD of this show that I saw, and there's a little clip as we're all waiting to go in at the pier in New York City where they blew up a car, and you can pick me out because I'm the only black guy in like a crowd of white folks at the gate. It's kind of funny, but so you have Wendy O. Williams looking like a freak. You have Richie Stott, who's like a 6'8" guitarist. He's on roller skates, ballet tights, a tutu, and a nurse's top and a nurse's hat with a blue mohawk. What is going on here? Then you have John Beauvoir, African-American guy with a blonde mohawk and a weird outfit on. Then another guy with this makeup. And you're just going, this is beyond Kiss. It's beyond Alice Cooper. They're blowing stuff up. So I was lucky that I saw some shit early on that was so out there that and that just went from there. Yeah, all the 80s. I got into fusion about 83, 84, and saw Holsworth in 84.
Oh, wow.
Wow, which was
a great time to see him. Yeah.
Dude, 1984 was a big year for me. Saw my first Zappa show with the same drummer, Chad Wackerman.
84 lineup. Okay.
And again, right before that, as we talked about, saw Matheny, saw Crimson on the Discipline tour. Oh. So, yeah, I was very fortunate, man. By 20,
very much, yes.
Yeah, by 20, I had seen a bunch of the big kind of, okay, like here's someone, Pat Metheny, and we're still looking at his stuff, at what he's doing. Adrian Belew, Robert Fripp. So I was very lucky that I saw like some seminal stuff very
Yeah,
early.
and early on, I mean, I had a slightly more sheltered existence. You know, growing up in Topeka, Kansas, nobody came there,
Yeah,
and
that's
you had to go an hour away to that big scary city, Kansas City, to see a show. So my folks wouldn't even let me consider going to one until I was probably like 16, and
right.
even then, they were holding their breath.
Where are you going, young man?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first show I saw was the Scorpions,
Oh,
1980.
that's great.
Yeah, it
One
was
of
a
yeah,
classic 80s metal show, though, for sure.
love them.
Yeah, and they had some opening act called Bon something, Bon Scotty, but no, Bon something. Anyway, I'm like,
blame
these guys will
blame
never go anywhere.
blame Derek Shilman, right?
Yeah,
He
actually,
signed Bon Jovi, right?
yeah,
But
we
I
talked about it. He says
yeah.
people still give him shit today over that, and it's just
Well,
like
you know,
those
it
songs will live forever. So
hey, you know, I never shit on music, man. You know, it's one of my things. Music is so special. Music is so magical. It makes people happy. I do. I really when people, you know, whether it's Debbie Gibson or was that song Friday, Friday, whoever that was.
yeah,
I,
Rebecca Black.
yeah, very good. I always say, you know what? Someone is happy right now. They're dancing. They're, you know, same thing with TikTok. You know, notwithstanding their spyware and all that, people are happy. They're dancing with their daughter, who they haven't talked to maybe in 4 months. They're learning how to play piano and showing off with a video. I don't know, man. There's so much hatred and dark stuff in the world. Really, you're gonna hate on music? You know,
Right.
it bums me out. And I have to say, and please, prog fans, not attacking you, but you do it a little too much. You know, there's a little just change the channel if you don't like it, or your kids listening to some hip hop, or just be happy they're not somewhere doing heroin in secret. You know that
Right. Yeah.
it's music. I mean, yeah, I don't, you know, so yeah, so all the pop stuff, I love it. AM radio, can't get enough. You know, Andy
I hear
Gibb.
you. Well, yeah, I'm a big sucker for just 70s pop in general, because
I
even the stuff that you might consider kind of cheesy or lightweight was beautifully put together. It was played by real people. All the instruments were tasty sounding. It was
that's
before
it.
any really flaky sounds were invented yet. So,
Yeah,
everybody had a curly cord. And
that's it.
it was,
You know,
and I just love watching those shows. Like I have a box set of the Midnight Special, and it's like,
it's great.
even the poppy stuff, you see these amazing
Best.
amps and guitars, and
No,
it's a treat to watch it. And what a
and
magic time.
exactly, and the diversity, because you'll go from the Spinners to Andy Gibb, and then you
And
might go
Helen
to
Reddy, and then
Helen Reddy,
and
it just went on from there. No, that again, many things that we enjoy in our friendship for these many years, but one of my favorites is that you're also a pop music fan. You're a melodies fan. You're a, you know, and you're able to understand that that's what's beautiful in the middle of this Jethro Tull song. It's beautiful melodies, and you also love beautiful melodies that might have been in a Bee Gees song. And so, you know,
yeah.
it's, you know, it's all good.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And variety is the spice of life.
We hope.
I
Yeah.
know it's such a cliche, but there's some wisdom in there.
Yeah.
I think. So yeah, you say you got into guitar at about 18. What was your first axe that you had?
So I have a really dear friend who's still a friend of mine, a guy named Mark Dobry, was a bass player. Such an important person in my life, because I bought, he loaned me this Strat copy for years, a Tokai, which I learned later on was
Pretty
excellent.
nice. Yeah, the guys from NXS
Yeah,
played those.
that's right. And Tokai makes copies for a lot of other companies. They made a lot of guitars that had stamped other companies. I think even Ibanez, but I think Fripp has a Tokai Les Paul, and so they're known for making excellent. So I had a Tokai Strat, so I was very lucky to start with a pretty good guitar. That was a loaner though. Then I bought my first guitar. I bought was a Vantage Vp820, completely obscure, but I look them up and they're worth a little money these days. I should have kept that one. So I had I'm not a collector, you know, as much as I'm so blessed. I've worked for some of the most amazing guitarists, We can talk about Steve and stuff like that in a minute. But I'm not a collector. I got my Paul Reed Smith that I've had since '07. So wow, that's like 13 years. Love it.
I've
Every
seen a
time.
few. I remember when I
Yeah.
first saw you, you had a brown Ibanez that you had a
Still have
guitar
it.
synth pickup on.
That's right.
Right.
Still have it.
I remember
Yeah.
you playing that. And I want to say I've seen you play a Strat maybe once or twice.
I have a white
Or maybe I'm thinking
Casio.
of Ike.
Well, I have a Strat. I have a Roland Ready Strat. So it's like one of those Fender Roland hybrids. It's got the 13-pin pickup.
Yeah.
You know, which I'm big on for that whole Matheny Belew world.
Right.
So I've got that Strat. You might have seen a white Casio Strat, which I think Takai made actually, and I use that a lot.
Okay.
It's just a guitar. I've got a Les Paul, a blue Les Paul Studio.
I remember that. I think that was the other one you were probably using.
That's it. I'm kind of boring. I mean, you've seen my 5 guitars, and the Ibanez I love. That's a Satriani. I think it's a JS09 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that pickup has come on and off. It's off now. But I'm not a collector. I just how many hands do you have? You know, I
don't know. Sometimes they just kind of find me like lost puppies.
They do.
You know, like this one that I did recently with my profile picture today.
Look at that. Yes.
You know, it's just it's from Mexico. It's not the most amazing Fender, but you know, my friend begged me to buy it for $100 and said he'd deliver it, and I was like, "Come on,
no." So the deals are tough. Yes, I agree.
It is. It's hard on me, you know. It's.
But every time I play other electrics and I go back to the PRS, man, I go, Jesus, Paul, you know there's a reason they are so sought after that. And the one I have is the McCarty special. Right? You know Ted McCarty?
Sure, yeah,
Of course, yeah. Silly question. More rhetorical for the audience. So audience members, if you're into guitar, go look up Ted McCarty. He worked at Gibson. He was a luthier and a designer and a guitar genius, a pickup genius. And he is involved in every important Gibson. The Les Paul, the 335, 345, the SG, which is really a Les Paul Jr., the Flying V, the Explorer, all the numbers, the 175, all brilliant. And later in his life, Paul Reed Smith hired him.
Oh, wow. That's right.
Yeah, to come work at the company. And so Paul just kind of honored this incredible man in modern guitar knowledge and had him work for the company and help design some new pickups and new things. So there's this guitar called the McCarty, which has a lot of Gibson mojo in it. So, you know, I love that guitar because I love Gibsons. I get to play Steve
You're
Howe's
probably
Gibson.
more a Gibson guy than a Fender guy, aren't you?
You know, well, the beauty of the Paul Reed Smith, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's an interview with him on YouTube somewhere, and he has a piece of paper and he says, here's what I did. And he draws the shape of a Strat. He says, I took that and then I drew the shape of a Les Paul. And that's his guitar shape, really. It's kind of in between
the two of them together.
Strat, yeah. So I love Strats and I love my Roland Ready Strat. I do. And I love a Strat. I love a Les Paul. The PRS really answers all those questions. I've got the coil tap on it so I can get that cleaner kind of funk Strat sound. But I probably, you know, especially the years working for Steve Howe, you know, wow, you play a 175 or a 345 and game over.
I know what you mean, man. You know, my first good guitar was a Les Paul, and I still have it all these years later.
Yeah.
And sometimes I might not play it for 6 months to a year. It kind of depends on what we're doing. You know, I was doing a lot of different tribute shows every month.
Yeah.
And it all depended on the wheelhouse. You know, when it was Led Zeppelin time, of course I'd bring it.
It's great.
You know,
yeah.
On Pink Floyd night, no.
Yeah.
But good. I know there's rare exceptions, but
yeah.
But yeah, and even all these years later, it's like I pick it up and it just kind of reminds me what a beautiful piece of work it is, you know. And
That's it.
It kind of goes, where you been?
That's it. Exactly. No, there's something about the Gibson golden era when they really were nailing it, because we all know Gibson, it's gone up and down, you know, but wow, you know, some of those guitars, especially that Steve has, I can't, you know, I just go like, wow.
I definitely want to get into those here in a few minutes. But I thought we'd talk a bit about Project Object first.
Sure.
I guess we should go back to, you know, how you first got exposed to Frank's music and what
Sure.
clicked for you, and
Yeah, that's
what inspired you to have a group to do it, and how you found the people to put that first lineup together.
sure. Well, the um, the quick version of the story. I'm 16, and I went to college. And my exposure to Zappa up till then, I loved Dr. Demento. Remember that
Oh
show?
yeah, sure.
Just loved
Fish
it.
heads.
Loved it. Loved
All
it.
that
And
stuff.
such an important thing for I went on to study a lot of electronic music. I studied in college electronic music, um, orchestral music, a lot of music. Um, musicology classes, and a lot of that was because of Dr. Demento. Because on that show, there was like Harry Parch type things, and I forget the guy's name. I'll remember in a minute, but the Spike Jones. Spike Jones.
I love
Uh,
those. My
yeah,
grandmother had those records.
I always forget his name, but
78.
there's another Spike Jones, right? Who's a modern film producer or something.
Spike Lee.
Yeah, well, of course,
Oh,
one
yeah.
of my heroes. But there's a Spike Jones
Oh,
too.
is
You know
there?
that?
Okay. I
Yeah,
just love
he's
the
like,
Spike Jones because of all the, the car horns and all the
oh,
little kind of
it's
crazy stuff that was on there. They were really fun to
that
listen to.
that's great and extra funny that you think I'd mix up Spike Lee, but Spike Jones is someone can help me out on that. He's like a modern guy who does surf punk stuff. Anyway, so I'd been exposed to Zappa because of something like Don't Eat the Yellow Snow or Dynamo. That's all I heard when I was about.
Right. Yeah. Montana or Dynamite.
Yeah, not even really. Probably just a funny song or two. And I was 14 or 15, Dr. Demento, and I thought, oh, Frank Zappa, here's that guy again. Funny guy, comedian guy. Jump ahead a couple years. I'll never forget. I was vacuuming in my house, and I would do that chore with the stereo cranked up. My mother was out, and I'm vacuuming. I was like, this isn't bad. I'm listening to loud FM radio. And Dancing Fool came on.
Uh,
And I thought, first of all, I loved rock and roll. I still, of course, loved those big chords. And open it up, and you're like, what's this? Don't know much about dancing. That's why I got this song. And you're like, this is weird. And then you start realizing this is not normal. It's going all over the place, and all these marimbas and things. And I'm going, something is really weird here. So that was the first time I locked into this guy's different. Jump ahead 2 years. I still didn't have any of these records. And a buddy of mine, I was in college for 2 weeks, and you meet different people. I was an engineering student, soon to fail out. And a buddy of mine said, hey, man, want to smoke a joint, listen to some albums? Sure, who doesn't? I'm 16. I went to college too early. Don't send your kids to college at 16. Go over there. He puts on Zoot Allures.
oh, nice.
That's the moment, Sean. That's the moment. It was like stepping into a portal, like on Wizard of Oz when it goes to color.
Right.
That's that moment. That record came on, bro, and I just went. I'd heard the name. I knew, oh, Frank Zappa, that guy. I just couldn't believe it. I just could. It was all over the place. It's stylistically just, that record. It's everywhere. The Black Napkin solo, you've never heard anything like this. And that was it. So the next couple months, I just did nothing but try to find more Frank Zappa music. And again, I'm in college, so you're hanging out with different people, and Zappa would come up and, oh, I got a few albums. Can I come by with some cassettes and get a copy? And you just did that. And I was broke. I couldn't buy the records then, but I bought a few as time went on, once I was out of that first year of school. But I just became, within no time, 70 albums, whatever, probably in 5 years or whatever it is. Saw Zappa 3 years later. Jump ahead. It's 1989, and I'm playing with my original band. And I used to do a Zappa party every year on his birthday in my apartment. We would get all my Zappa albums and tapes, which were voluminous, interviews. We'd put out all these magazines, and, and people would come over, and we would listen to Zappa for 24 hours. Really, 3, 4 in the morning, there's someone on the couch, and Grandma Zoo was playing, and after breakfast, a bunch more people would arrive. So we would do that. And one year, I had a band. I was playing with my band. One year, I said, "Wait a minute, let's learn 6 Zappa songs." And so we learned the easiest, bluesiest, "I'm the Slime" or something, and Wino Man. And it was great. Everyone loved it. The party went great. And I said, well, let's learn 6 more next year. And so on. And by the 3rd year, I was like, well, we have a band here. Let's book a gig. And that's around 1990. And I had met Frank Zappa, actually, a few times. I met him about 3 times. But I met Ike Willis starting around 84. So we were in touch. Now Zappa has stopped touring. I was in touch with Ike by phone call back then. And about 93 or 4, I said, Ike, I've got this band. I'm doing Zappa. We're playing a few shows. We'd love you to come play. And Ike Willis, for some of you that don't know, this is one of Zappa's longest-running frontman guitarists from 78 to the end. So Ike says, sure, send me a cassette. Let me hear what it's like. That's what it was like, folks. You'd get a cassette, put it in an envelope, send it in the mail, and wait 5 days. Now it's like while you're talking, you're like, hang on, bro. I just sent you the Dropbox. Are you cool? Cool. Amazing. So fast forward, he comes out, he straightens us out on some chords and some times and tempos, and bingo, we start touring with Ike Willis in the mid-90s. And it went from there. We have since toured or played with about 15 different Zappa alumni. Ed Mann, Napoleon Murphy Brock, Ray White, Bunk Gardner, Don Preston, all kinds of guys. Thana Harris, Bob Harris. It's been wonderful. Arthur Barrow, Denny Wally, of course, near you in Atlanta. And so that's it. So I'm very proud. Now there's a million Zappa tribute bands, which I love, but I'm so proud and humbled that my little band, we were the first to go on national tours of doing Zappa music, our rickety little band. And we were the first and only band to play with all these alumni.
Yeah.
To this date, no one has done that. But I love that there's, my buddy Tim Palmieri has the Z3 with, have you heard them? Organ Trio?
No,
Z3.
so.
Wow. Punch them in. They take like a jam band approach on Zappa, but they play all the parts, all the heads, and they have Ed Mann. There's Ed Palermo in New York City.
Sure. Love his.
Of course, Dweezil, just, carrying the flagship. I mean, wow, his band
Absolutely.
is
the grandmothers were great when they were out doing their thing.
Then you have the grandmothers, which that's the bridge for me into becoming a tour manager and working in music. The Grandmothers was the first band that I tour managed. I tour managed my band for a bunch of years. But that was the moment in the year 2000. I took them out on tour, drove the van. It was, Don Preston, Bunk Gardner, Ken Rosser on guitar. I think you're friends with him here. Billy Mundy on drums, and Roy Estrada on bass. And I was tour manager. And I went and drove the van, booked the van, did all the stuff, And I said, wait a minute. This is just what I do for my own band. But I don't have to learn any music or tune my guitar or carry any gear. This is great. And here I am,
20 years later.
30. Wow. 20 years later. Yeah. Doing that for other people.
What a resume.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the first time I saw you guys. I was at the Variety Playhouse here in Atlanta, which has always been one of my favorite places to see a show because it's not ginormous. It's kind of intimate.
Sure.
And they fixed it up really nice. I don't know if you've been back there in the last year or two, but they really
not that recent, but
they really got. You know how you used to walk in and there'd be the ticket booth and there'd be a place to buy food and all that.
Right.
They ripped all that out. You just walk in the front door and you can see the stage now.
Wow! So they knocked down like the popcorn in the bar.
All that's gone. It turned to a big bar that faces both directions, so you can walk in and get a drink like you always did, or you can walk around the other side and grab a drink while you're looking over your shoulder and watching the show.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
That was probably 20 years ago now. I don't know if you remember this particular tour, but you had Rick Bartow on bass, and you had Don and Bunk. They opened the show. It was the Don and Bunk show, and the first song I ever heard live from Zappa was "The Little House I Used to Live In."
Wow. With those guys.
In
their set. Wow.
Yeah. And then you guys came out and just flattened me. I felt like I've been hit by a truck, but it was like kind of truck where you just want to get in the middle of the road and get hit by it again.
That's great. Well, thank you. And I remember meeting you probably that first gig, and we were fast friends.
Could have been, yeah. And And then I caught you a number of times over the years elsewhere.
Sure. No,
Apache Cafe, Smith's Old Bar, you know.
Right. No, you're one of whenever we're going to Atlanta, you're one of those people who are like, okay, we'll see Sean. Yeah, I remember that tour very well, and I also one of the things I'm proud of is pulling these guys out of retirement. Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you had Napoleon that night too.
Probably, yeah. And that was one of those things where it was like, because especially Bunk Gardner, he hasn't done that much over the years. Plays a lot actually at home, and plays a lot locally. And here's a tidbit for prog fans: Bunk Gardner lives a few houses, I think, but certainly within a mile or something of Rusty Anderson. You know who that is from
McCartney's band.
Yeah.
Amazing guitar player.
Yeah, so check this out. So Rusty and Bunk are friends for many years, and they get together and they do like space music. Rusty loves to just do some looping, and like many guitarists, we're into the weirder. But how cool is that to picture Rusty Anderson with like a Strymon looper, and there's Bunk Gardner doing some echoes. So that's a tidbit for fans. But I sure do remember that tour. And one of the cool things about playing Atlanta was that by the time we got there, it was like the 10th or 12th gig. So Atlanta was always really good because by then we worked at any kinks and kind of plus that big stage. And anytime, as you know, as a musician, if it sounds good up on stage, you're going to play better.
Sure.
And that's one of the top places in the country. I mean,
wow.
As a listener and a player.
Yeah, so, I can't ever remember seeing a show there where I said the sound sucked. It was always great.
Yeah. I'm in touch, very, very good friends with Brad Sina, right? You know Brad?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he's the manager there at Variety for 20 years more. So a very dear friend, and so we're in touch a lot. And like many venues, they're just trying to figure out like what happens next. So yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
You remember that tour where Peter Gabriel bounced around in that ball?
Yes.
Everybody needs one of those, and then we
yeah. Right.
And people would be like, "Are we at a Flaming Lips concert?" Or
right.
It totally seems like something they do.
Yeah.
So, any pointers on dissecting Frank's music? Because it's some of the most intricate stuff around, and just the thought of learning those pieces. I would think some were probably much harder than others, but I mentioned
sure, that's a great question. Well, you raise a great question, and one of the things is to start studying odd tuplets. I mean, so I get this question a bunch, and I have one of my students. Let me see if I can. So here's a drum beat I got going on. And that could be on Jazz from Hell because it's not straight 4/4.
Right.
Yeah, there's an odd time against an even time, right? So great cue there, Sean. So one of the things I think you can do if you want to figure out Zappa is that starting in the late 60s, he was obsessed with polyrhythmic stuff, with odd time rhythms. And that comes out of, again, someone wants to make a real study of Zappa. Again, it's perfect because one of my guitar students, definitely go listen to some Spike Jones, listen to some Edgar Varese, listen to some Stravinsky, because Stravinsky was pushing the envelope on rhythms and juxtaposing rhythms. And then I think it'll just train your ear a little bit to kind of, it's like eating spicy food or eating broccoli rabe or something. It's a big jump, Zappa, sometimes for some people. So listening to some of those things, of course, listening to doo-wop and listening to Johnny Guitar Watson and all the blues people, Elmore James. That's the interesting thing about Zappa. He made a combination of some very unlikely ingredients, you would think, on paper. Of course, they're perfectly mixed, but he loved all the blues guys and the more obscure ones, and he loved this very obscure Eastern or European classical kind of thing, or orchestral kind of thing. Again, Edgar Varese, Stravinsky. He quoted Stravinsky all the time. He quoted Petrushko all the time. He quotes The Rite of Spring in the beginning of Ship Arriving Too Late. You know that track?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that when he's mentioning and some kind of woo-hoo-hoo, ha-ha, ritual sacrifice, right? You know those lyrics?
Yeah.
The beginning, there's not much lyrics, but go check that out, fans, if you're a Zappa fan. When he's talking about ritual sacrifice, which is what Rite of Spring is about, right? It's about a sacrifice. Right then, the band goes some kind of woo-hoo-hoo, ha-ha, ritual. Dun, 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 dun. They're playing the rhythm from Rite of Spring. So he just loved those odd rhythms. So I would say sit with the metronome and try playing. If you're a musician and you want to go down this road, just sit there with just a metronome and then start playing diddle-it, 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 triplets on the pulse. That's enough of a weird thing for some people. And then start playing 5 tuplets. Diddle-it, 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 you know, do it slower so you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, and that's the opening to the door. That's so simplistic, but that's what's going on in things like the Black Page. The Black Page is in 4/4. It's in 4/4, but it's got a bunch of 13 tuplets on the quarter notes or on the upbeat of you know, an eighth note upbeat on a quarter note. It's got 5 tuplets. It's got some triplets somewhere. It's got so he did that over and over and over again. The Eric Dolphy Memorial Barbecue is a good one for piano players to listen to from Weasels Rip My Flesh. That's one of the early times he really got that sounding good, to where that's kind of a waltz, but it's got and all of those are, it's just 3/4, but on the beat he's squeezing odd times. And that's a dividing line with musicians, because musicians understand 8th notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes, 64th notes, right? Everything's multiples of 2. But what freaks some people out is the odd tuplets, which is, that's Zappa's kind of meat and potatoes. Because to some people it doesn't make sense, because how can you cut a quarter note into 5? Like, what do you call that? Well, it's a 5 tuplet on the beat, on the one. So I think if people kind of drill down into that idea, and again, Zappa didn't invent that. That's in a lot of African music, a lot of Indian music, weird subdivisions, you know. A lot of Indian music is 31 beats to the measure and things like that. But I think that's another thing to listen to if you're trying to understand Zappa music is Indian music, tabla music, you know. So that's one element. The other element, tonally and harmonically, to get into Zappa is checking out whole tone scales. You know, especially guitarists. You know, a lot of guitarists, we get caught in pentatonic, and we start learning some modes, and you get into,
I think
you know,
learning some King Crimson songs are kind of an entryway into
a whole
tone.
Absolutely.
And diminished as well, which I think
Absolutely.
is equally useful.
Absolutely.
It's almost like the opposite of it.
Absolutely. And playing whole tone solos over a diminished chord, which, you know, those are the chords in whole tone scalar, you know, theory. Right. But King Crimson is another one. I mean, you take One More Red Nightmare, that awesome. Right, the reason that sounds so evil and weird, it's whole tone, you know, and right. So Fripp's a big whole tone guy, but Zappa, wow, he went crazy with it starting in the mid-'70s, and tons of his soloing. He's always soloing over a pedal. He's never soloing over changes.
I noticed that. It's always a vamp, maybe 2 chords.
Sometimes 2. Yeah, at the most you get 2. That's why it's so fascinating. There's 2 Zappa songs. Blessed Relief, right? That's I think the Grand Wazoo. That song, and the song Alien Orifice, which is one of my favorite, maybe my favorite Zappa performance of all time, is Alien Orifice from the 1981 MTV concert. You know that
the red jumpsuit.
Wow.
Show, right?
That the solo he takes on that, but also he solos over a bunch of chords. There's a chord progression there, and you never hear that in Zappa land. He picks 2 notes, 3 notes, but in doing so, he's able to do hybrid scales. He can go in and out of pentatonic. He can go major, minor, whole tone. So I think if you want to learn some Zappa language, folks, musicians, check out whole tone scales. And there's really only 2 whole tones centered on C or C sharp whole tone scales. But if you start checking that out and you go, oh, wow, there's the Zappa sound. Finally, the final part of this answer would be guitar tones. If you're an electric guitarist, understand that Zappa was a decade ahead, at least in the mid-'70s, when he developed these huge racks of effects processors. And you could see them in the Baby Snakes movie. Because what's interesting about Zappa, like Pete Townsend, another hero, is he embraced synthesizers very early on, and he understood that you had great power in control voltage. So those racks that Zappa had custom built in the mid-'70s, people need to understand. He realized, wait a minute, I can take this studio rack stuff, this 19-inch rack mount stuff, which goes back to the 40s, mounting things in a rack. And he said, these things usually need you to stand there and turn the knobs, right? Phasers, flangers, all these studio quality choruses and things. And he realized that you can get a custom pedal board built that sent control voltage into this kind of modulation effect. So someone studying Zappa, again, if you want to go listen to something like Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, that series of records, that is science fiction. I mean, he's doing stuff in 77, 78, 79 that was impossible. It was pre-MIDI, yet he was doing live parameter control of filter resonance and phaser width and flanger speed and all these kinds of things. So that's the other important part about Zappa, that he really embraced whatever
really
was around.
had some unique guitar tones. I mean, just otherworldly, like that sound at the beginning of what's the Guitar Low Budget Orchestra?
Yes, that's a great one.
I don't know if it's like an ovation through some kind of filter or what, but it's like a sound I've never really heard before.
That might be the guitar that's got the pickup in the neck. He had one installed in the neck, so it was picking up a little bit of the acoustic tone, and then, I can't remember, but right around then he had that on that record too, I think, Orchestra Favorites. But a tone master, but those are some ways to understand Frank. And again,
How about chordally? I mean, I noticed stuff, like these chords in Zoodalers, you get a lot of this kind of, this one here.
Yeah. That's
it's like it's kind of like a 7th chord, but you're throwing a 4th in there to give it kind of a suspended zing.
Exactly. I was going to say sus. A lot of sus 2, sus 4 kind of things happening. A lot of open strings. Any chance he could have an open string, like something like Watermelon and Easter Hay or Outside Now, there's a bunch of open strings ringing, and it's very simple chord shapes. It's like a G shape or a D shape with some open strings with the high E open. So I think that's a great road for Zappa to experiment with pretty standard chord shapes, moving them around, and experimenting with open strings. And again, Zappa is that acquired taste, like Broccoli Rob, where a weird flat 9 that doesn't belong there, or this 13th, does that really belong there? A lot of upper harmonic stuff, 11ths, 13ths, things like that, because he always had that open string in the chordal stuff. A lot of arpeggios, a lot of just repetitive arpeggios, and then a lot of power chords, a lot of 1/5 octave chords for the rock songs. A lot of pentatonic licks, tons of blues. Zappa is all about the blues. He never forsook that, however the past tense is, all the way to his last couple of records. There's always some blues, and he had Johnny Guitar Watson show up on a lot of records all the way into the 80s. So those are some elements. I think the embracing of technology too, and where it all comes together in one way is Jazz from Hell, because he had the synclavier, and he's one of the first, one of that handful of people who bought it. And I think the synclavier, as he said in many interviews, someone researching this, go look for his cover story interview in Keyboard Magazine. He gets deeply into this. But for him, it was a dream, because now he could do the kind of the thing I just played with these drum machines. He could just ask the machine to take, you know, an 11 tuplet, have a triplet, and have the middle note of the triplet be an 11 tuplet over, you know, a slow 4/4, and you know, the eighth notes are all alternating sevens and fives, or whatever crazy. You just come up with stuff that few musicians could play.
You know,
Man could play it.
I think it's important to point out that, you know, a lot of people think, oh, progressive rock is only progressive if you're playing in odd meters.
Right.
But no, I mean, Gentle Giant's a great example of a band that played in 4/4 more often than not, but
More often than not.
more progressive than anything you can hear.
Yeah.
The way they syncopate.
That's it.
You know, and it's just like, so don't be a snob about the 4/4 prog bands.
I know.
It's like, half of what you love is 4/4. You don't even think about it.
Well, prog fans learn that as soon as it's like a little too much knowledge kind of problem. They learn that something's odd time, and then that becomes. But yeah, Gentle Giant's a great example where a lot of that stuff on paper is simpler than it looks. It's the overlaying. So someone's doing something in 4, but then the vocal line is some Gregorian plain chant, and it's
right.
3, and then the bass line is in 5/4. So there is some odd sometimes, but the main pulse of the song, you're right. Yeah. It's funky.
It is. Oh, that's what I love about them is they had such a deep pocket. You know, they rocked harder than most of their peers.
Please, Interview. You can't get funkier than the song Interview.
Oh, and I just love it. Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
That's funk.
Yeah, I just love it when they break into one of these deep grooves. Like Proclamation's a good example. When it finally breaks and gets into that groove, it's just like,
that album is a Bible to me. This recent video where they all did that song, oh my God, that was
amazing. You know, and a very rare thing to happen. You know, I mean,
absolutely.
I was totally synchronicity that I just happened to interview Derek like the week that came out. It's like.
Right.
You know, what's the greatest week to interview him in the last 30 years?
Right.
This one. And I didn't even realize it. I noticed that a friend of mine did an interview, and I thought, well, if he's doing press, I might as well ask him.
Reach out, yeah.
Maybe something's cooking. And it's like, yeah, something was cooking.
It's awesome. I gotta dig back and see that. That's one I didn't see, but I gotta see that. I've had the pleasure.
Great. And his son Noah, who made the video, he drops in for about 15 minutes.
Oh, great! No, I'll check that out.
Put it together. Yeah, it was an editing masterwork of the highest.
Right. Oh, I watched it
twice. Ray Shulman actually mixed it.
Oh, okay. Did the audio.
Sent it to him. And his uncle wrote back and said, "Thanks?" ?
Yeah. What have you gotten us into?
Right.
Derek has shown up. He showed up for Yes one time, which was like, Derek Shulman's here. That's always fun when guys like that are fans of the band you're working for. But he showed up there, and I got to meet him. And then he showed up to see Eddie Jobson at the UK.
Oh, nice.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I'm noticing this is great. People are chatting. Cliff Stankiewicz, what's up? He says the Moody Blues are nothing but 4/4 and are prog as fuck. Absolutely. Some cool people. Hey, Mark Greenbaugh, what's up? Black Page is insane. Oh, this is cool. Was Frank making fun of 50s culture in the American middle class? So that's funny because I was just going to bring up the other element of Frank, and we can't whitewash this, if you can use that term anymore. The PC language nightmare. But Frank, who is not PC at all, I always tell people, go read the lyrics from the first song on the first album.
Oh, yeah.
Speaks for itself. I'm not going to put words in Frank Zappa's mouth. His interviews are out there. He's on a million shows. Go watch him. He had a pretty clear view. And but he spoke out on that album and songs like Trouble Every Day. This is 66. And he's talking about injustice, police brutality, the upside down economic situation for black people in LA. He was talking about at that time. The lyrics in that song, Mr. America, walk on by, the schools that will not teach, the minds that won't be reached. Mr. America, he talks about. So again, I love America, and Frank loved America, but it's okay to criticize America. And I think that's another element of Frank Zappa, that he really held up a mirror, a critical mirror, while also expressing that he loved being in a land of opportunity, where he could start his own business, start Zappa Records, start Straight Bizarre, run his own studio. You know, I think he had a nice balance of, you know, hey, I love it here, but here's some things to fix. And I think,
Exactly.
you know, throughout the career, all the way to the end, I'm very proud that in the '88 tour, I took a big sign up on stage, and people can find the bootleg. I think it's February 8th, 1988, 7th or 8th, 1988, at the Warner Theater in D.C., and they're about to do Strictly Gentile, and I took a big sign up for Frank. I had met him the night before, after the show in New York, and it's one of my best Frank Zappa memories. We're outside behind the Beacon, about 6 or 8 fans, everyone saying hi, shook his hand, said hi to Gail, and I said, Frank, I'm bringing a sign tomorrow night to the show about Ed Meese. And he turns and goes, make it a big one. So that's my ultimate Frank Zappa memory, and then, so I take the sign there the next day, and he took it up on stage, and he read all this stuff about Ed Meese. I took the letters PMRC, remember them?
Oh yeah.
Censorship, and I
Boy,
changed
they talked me out of buying a bunch of records.
I know. it was all, I know, it was all topical then, and so it said things like, pathetic morons as record censors, PMRC. The other one was Pluke Mises Rotting Cornhole, and I forget the others, but just to have Frank Zappa, you know, Ike knew me at that point, so he said, "Oh, here's Andre with a sign," you know, and that's kind of my most fun memory, that I inserted myself into the show, and Frank was about that. Anyone who saw him all night, fans were bringing up panties and flags and all kinds of shit. So, he's you know, just one of the most important American artists. I put him, you know, with some of the great writers, and for me, Zappa and Gil Scott-Heron were kind of the people that stood on my shoulders for a lot of political and social awareness and musical diversity, all kinds of music with those two guys. So his lessons are still there. I mean, a lot of what he said is happening right now. I mean, a lot of his,
you know,
so.
Yeah, he was, you know, he wasn't a psychic. He was just very astute. And, you know, it's a shame. I'm sorry to say that, you know, so much of it still is a problem to deal with now.
That's right. And he was correct with his critiques on the left and the right.
Right. Yeah. He wasn't. I think he had a kind of an equal disdain for both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know? And I think that's
kind
of, you know, it's, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people nowadays, it seems like you can't be in the middle, but.
Right. And there's a nuance to that. Once you drill down, he had specific complaints about either side. He tended to call the hippies idiotic and time wasting and just stoned in the dirt and can't get it together. But he did call the rising right-wing stuff in the 80s and the encroachment of Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and all that.
Oh, the whole oligarchy.
Yeah. That's right. He called that out.
Pike, you know.
Yes. He was very clear that was far more dangerous because that was fascist and that was changing our laws and stuff. But it's important to understand that it's two different types of poison, and he really identified that well. And he kind of said, you know, I don't like the politically correct crap either, and the overarching regulations and the things that the left does. So I think, we need more of that. We need both sides looking in the mirror. We need both sides checking out the other side's news and ideas. You know, we have to. It's crazy to only watch Fox or only watch Rachel Maddow. I mean,
right, this whole insular bubble thing doesn't do anybody any favors. It's just, you know, it's just like you're preaching to the choir, you know, and yeah, I don't know.
Terrible.
I'm hope for the best. May common sense prevail. I don't think it's as common as I thought it was.
Yeah, it's but it's a fun movie.
Yeah. So so who was the first? Okay, so you did teching for the mothers or grandmothers, and what came after that? Was it Belew?
No, I was working at School of Rock for about a year.
Oh, guys. Well, you know what? I'm going to have Paul Green on next month.
Oh, great. I'm doing an interview with him actually on Wednesday. So yeah, Paul's great, and he's going to be on my show too. Yeah, so we have a lot of overlap, of course.
Yeah, we do.
But Paul's a dear friend. I've known him since he had one School of Rock, the first one in Philly, and so anyway, Bergen, New Jersey. I'm working at School of Rock for about a year, and we're just done with the AC/DC show, I think it was, and we're hanging out. A couple teachers. It's Friday night, and everyone's the kids are gone. We're having a beer maybe, and yeah. So what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I got a gig, and one of the guys says, yeah, I'm supposed to go do this thing, man. Maybe it was earlier in the week. I'm supposed to do this thing this weekend, and I don't know. I shouldn't have the time. I'm supposed to go tech for this guy. And he says, you should do it, Andre. You're always touring with your band. And I was like, yeah, who is it? And he goes, Al Di Meola. Do you know? Of course I know Al Di Meola. And I was like, that's way out of my league. Are you kidding me? I've only done, some little stuff. But wow, tell me more. And he says, yeah, he's got this weekend. He needs somebody. And yeah, I should give you the number. No, man. So I drove home that night, and I thought, just make the phone call. Made the call, did the phone interview with his secretary. A couple days later, there I am at Al Di Meola's house, as instructed, with a weekend bag and my passport. And I did the first gig. His sound guy kind of ran me through some of the things for setting Al up. End of the gig, Al said, you did well. You're hired. Did you bring your passport? I did, Al. Good. We're going to Canada in the morning. Wow. So there we were at this guitar festival way up in a town called Rune Naranda. Never heard of it. Copper mining town way up in and that was it. I stayed with Al for a year. I still look back on it as one of the most instructive parts of my life ever. Because Al's a tough cookie. He's legendary. Magic. Everyone knows. He's the legend is out there. But you know what? I give thanks because I started out with such a kind of a thorny, kind of difficult obstacle course known as the Al Di Meola Tour that I really was ready for almost anything. I mean, and I went in that first year, I was in Chile for the first time, Israel for the first time, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Kosovo. I mean, we went all around the U.S., so that was my first gig. And then it went to Adrian Belew, who I still work for about 14 years later. And it just kind of, you meet people on gigs and one thing leads to another. The Adrian one, we were playing up in Russia at this big 1,000-year celebration in the town of Tatarstan up in Kazan, Russia. And all these people were on it. It was the Concert for Peace. They had Patti Smith and Eddie Jobson's very first appearance in 20-some years. They had K2, which is Pat Mastelotto's thing.
Right.
I think the Stickmen were probably there, and on it went. But Adrian Belew was there, so was Keith Emerson. So that's where I met Keith Emerson's crew, and we hung out for 10 days there in Moscow. So then they called me when it was they needed a tech for Greg Lake. So these things kind of happen. Just you meet people, and I also met Eddie Jobson on that Russian gig and ended up being his first production manager in 25 years. So it's all random. You can't plan this shit. You just have business cards and show up on time.
Right. It's it's kind of a cliche, but it is kind of who you know. It all ties together.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. It's like the longer you're in this business, the smaller the circle sometimes seems to feel. Would you agree with that?
There's a bit of that. Yeah, you start running into different people. And then there's different scenes. Like I was really excited about this summer. It was going to be my biggest tour ever because you've got some guys that work in the jazz world and there's a little overlap. And
right.
Then,
this was the Shed tour with Foreigner and who else?
Which one? For me, you mean?
For Yes. Yeah, wasn't it?
No, this summer. Well, let's see. 5 tours got canceled for me this year.
Oh,
2
wow.
yet. Oh, it sucks, dude. I'm just trying to find the positive because you have to. And I just have an attitude where people have lived through wars and famines and Mount Vesuvius. And what are we going to do? This is our tragedy. We're humans. Have you heard the new Alice Cooper song,
No, what's it about?
Please go hear it. It's called, I forget what it's called, but it's about humans kicking ass on this coronavirus. I mean, it's kind of corny and 80s rock in a certain way, but it's Alice saying, come on now, we're humans. We've gone through a lot of shit. We're going to do this. Let's stay together. Let's work. It's called, We Can Make It or whatever it's called. Yeah. But that's my attitude,
Well, I've been saying, for this year, it's like the revolution will be air conditioned.
There you go. Speaking of Gil Scott-Heron,
it could be worse in many ways.
That's very good. But so I this summer, so my 5 tours I lost. 2 Yes tours. Ricky Lee Jones, which is my first time working for her. That's a disappointment. Everything is next year though, so we'll see. Brand X, who I've toured with many times, and
right, yeah.
Another tour that's gone now. But the biggest tour in my life so far, Sean, would have been happening right now in a stadium. I'd be wrapping up in a stadium right now. I was going to work tech for CeCe DeVille and Poison.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the tour was Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Joan Jett, and Poison. And I was so looking forward to this. I mean, for so many reasons. I'm an old metalhead, and just seeing all that hair and that spandex and the tight clothes that don't fit, and that's just the audience,
right. I've been to a few metal shows in my older years.
Sure.
It's like I don't know. It's like I don't know. It seems like most of the audience is people our age.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's some people in their 20s there too, but
sure.
The majority of us are looking to relive our misspent youth for another.
That's part of it, and part of it, the tickets start at $150. So that comes back to this other discussion of young people in music.
But that's a lot of bands for the money. So
Yes, but even single shows are $100 and up.
Oh, yeah. You thank the Eagles for setting this bar in the '90s, and everyone
that's right
running away with it.
Because I'm incredibly pedantic and annoying. It's just Eagles.
Oh yes, that's right. Well,
there's no but that's a good trivia question. But anyway, the Alice Cooper song people should listen to. It's called "Don't Give Up," and it's not the Gabriel song. And he looks like it's May 16th, so it's a new song, but it's a weird song for him, and it's literally about where we are right now. So,
okay.
But yeah, that's some of the people I've toured with. Like I said, Derek Trucks. I've toured with the band Mo, the Great American kind of. I even want to call them jam band.
I hate to use that word too. I have Chris from Humphreys on next week.
Say hi. That's my buddy.
And I was like, it's like. I'm hesitant to call them a jam band because there's so much more than that. I mean, they're kind of like a progressive rock jam band in a way.
I love them. Yeah, no, you're right. There's fusion, there's jazz rock, you end up with 10 labels, and you kind of go, and the labels are useful because if you say to someone that never heard them, let's go to this show. Well, what is it? And if you said what you just said,
well, say it's a jam band. I think that implies that there will be a lot of improvisation.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And there is.
Yeah.
But it's so, they played together for so many years. It just, it's so tidy. You might not even realize it's improv sometimes.
That's it. Yeah. I think you had the perfect description. If I was telling someone, say, you know what? They're often called jam bands. So there's a little element of that, but it's rock, it's pop, it's jazz rock, it's fusion, it's metal, it's covers, it's improv. They're fantastic. Jake, great player. They all are.
Yeah.
And what I love is I've seen them a number of times. And early on, I think we played some gigs together early for them. Now they're like one of the biggest bands. But what I love about when you're watching them, they have a younger crowd. And I love when they pull out something, because I remember one time they pulled out That's All from Genesis.
Okay, yeah.
You remember that song?
Oh, sure.
And that's one of those dividing line songs, right? I love that. You love that. But on progressive ears, that got shredded.
Oh, well, the purists maybe. But, I grew up in the 80s, so those songs all are happy memories for me.
Come on, bro.
Yeah.
No.
So
I like the groups on Facebook. I spend a lot of time, like I'm in a handful of modular synth or Arturia users or Ableton users, and those are fun because they're kind of like the forums. You get in there and it's like, okay, let's talk about Ableton and these new plugins, and no one's going to bring up politics, no one's going to bring up Moogs or even some other gear, and so you just talk about what you want to talk about.
Right, and it's none of this petty, you know. My favorite lineup of this band is the definitive one, and you're an idiot if you don't agree. You know,
what the fuck?
I'm so tired of that shit.
I know.
I mean, and yes, forums was one of the, you know, it's not like Rush where it was just the same three guys forever. You know, they don't have these arguments in their fan base.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, Rush fans find something to argue.
I'm sure they would.
But you're right in general.
But yes, you know how many lineups have there been? 15 maybe over the years.
Oh.
And each one of them has their loyal supporters, you know.
Dude, you know, as you know, I've worked for Yes since 2011, so I hear you know, I get personal emails. I just got a letter in my PO box the other day. A guy wants some pics, and you know, so, but there's always the, you know, I like Yes, but not as much as I did in '77. I mean, and people, so there's I've heard it all from the Yes fans.
You know, I just find that music is still really majestic in a live setting.
That's it.
You know, and that's really what it boils down to. You know,
that's it.
It may be different people, but spirit is still there.
That's
and
it.
You know, and I love just going to some of the shows in the last 10 years and looking around and seeing all these teenagers in the audience getting their mind blown for the first time.
You know, it's one of the highlights of my life when. I love when because I can't give away many picks because people don't realize Steve. I give him a couple picks a week, and he keeps them.
Right.
Them. Yeah, he likes them to wear out just a little.
I don't think I've ever seen him drop one either.
That's the thing. It's a fascinating thing because it's a funny thing with picks because people are used to walking up to the guitar tech, hey, give me some picks, and they throw them a couple, you know, and. Because there's 10,000 of them, and they say Alex Lifeson or whatever.
Right.
And Steve's funny, and people think I'm lying. So here it is, folks. It's true. The picks are incredibly special. It took me over a year to find the exact type of pick he likes because the original company stopped making them, and they were a certain type of plastic. So it took forever and ever. I got them now. There's little pearl, teardrop sized, you know.
They're smaller than a typical guiar pick.
Yeah, they're like a jazz.
The kind of pumpkin seed shaped kind of.
Kind of like that. Let me see if I have one here. Oh yeah, here's one that they're kind of a jazz, but anyway, I give him a few. He'll come to me at the beginning of the tour and say, Andre, give me 10 picks, and that's it. And people don't believe this. I give him 10 picks, and I won't hear from him about picks for 3 or 4 weeks. It's crazy. Yeah. So he plays them, and he wants them to wear down just a little bit, and he keeps them in his pocket, and they have to have a little edge to them. And if I'm lucky, because I'm closest to him on stage, if I'm lucky, the day a pick goes south on him, he just throws it away. And if I'm lucky, I go, oh, God, all right, about 3 feet over from the stage right monitor, if I could only find it. And I find it sometimes, and so they're like gold. I really can't give them away because I never get them.
Sure.
People have to believe that. So here's, so of course, I'm Steve Howe's guitar tech, so I'm allowed to have a couple. But there it is.
Okay. Like SH. All right.
It's like
kind of the tortoise shell looking kind of.
Yeah, and nothing on the back.
Cool. Okay.
So that's what he likes. That's a rare one because that must have been one because sometimes he'll reject them. He'll play and he'll just something. It just doesn't feel right to him. He goes on and feel a lot of the stuff. This one got crushed obviously in a road case. So.
Have you ever seen those ones that Trevor Rabin uses? It's a shark fin looking thing. It has like a corrugated edge on it, and then
really, I didn't see that.
Really weird.
We did the one show with Trevor. This little thing is sitting here, so I'll treat people to that.
Hey, I'll ask you, any memories of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame night? I talked to Billy about it, and he said it was politically charged, but it was great to be there anyway.
Yeah, well, you know, that's I love Billy. Everyone's got their different perspectives. For him, it may have been because he didn't play, and there's stuff with who.
Well, he's like when I met Geddy Lee. He met Geddy Lee. Geddy's like, why aren't you playing this?
Yeah. So that may be the politics he refers
like
to.
politics, man.
Yeah,
You know?
and there was also some politics because you had two managers. You had the Anderson, Wakeman, Rabin management and their wishes and desires, and our management and their wishes and desires, and they worked really well together. Everyone played well together, but sure, there's a bit in the air of different wishes, and who took the longest solos and things like that. So there's a bit of that. I guess that's what he's talking about. My memories. Rush is one of the most important bands in my life. When my dad died a year ago, the intensity of Neil Peart dying was so it fucked me up so bad existentially in terms of how important that man was. It actually helped me with my dad's death. I'm serious. I went through 4 or 5 days of such sorrow and depth of stuff that it was incredibly therapeutic, actually. So that's how hard. I saw every Rush tour from '79 till I missed the final one because I was on tour. So I'm just setting the stage here for the moment we find out as Yes Crew, hey, we're doing this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's going to be with Wakeman, Rabin, and and Anderson, and Geddy Lee is going to sit in.
Right.
Head explodes. So just setting the stage on that. So there I was that day he came in, and you just sat there. I just said, there's the man, just with a scarf. And he's very nervous and calm, he said later on, because he's walking in, he's going to meet his heroes. So that was what was surreal about it. Like you're watching Geddy Lee shaking Rick Wakeman's hand, shaking Steve Howe's hand, going around the room. Alan White, it's an honor to meet you. And you're just like, this is ridiculous. He looks like, he's nervous. So they come in, they rehearse, blah, blah, blah. His tech is still one of my dear friends, a guy named Scully, who's also Jeff Beck's tech. So they rehearse for a few days. You're sitting there watching Geddy Lee learn some Yes and have fun and then we did it, and it was one of the more nerve-wracking gigs I've ever done, other than, say, the final ELP gig in front of tens of thousands of people. It was so nerve-wracking because it was going to be TV. You had all these people crawling around stage. You had this down-to-the-minute situation where we were going to roll on, do our thing, and roll off, and do our thing with 5 huge stars. Everyone. But so it was a gig fraught with nervousness. You check things and you check things twice. When they finally went on stage and broke into Roundabout, I could finally exhale because you go, okay, that guitar is in tune. It's there. Well, it's working. And that's what you think about as a tech. You worry. You worry that the amp is going to work. Even if it's worked 90 gigs in a row, it's your job to worry because so that was what a lot of it was until they got playing, and then you relax and you're like, wow, I'm hearing Anderson and Wakeman back together with these guys doing Roundabout, and there's Geddy Lee. And I remember watching it on stage right, watching some TV monitors and all these techs of the Hall of Fame are there. And I had very little room to work. People are running all around. I'm trying to protect these priceless guitars. And I remember Alex Lifeson was there on stage right, and he's watching a monitor, and he's going, because there's 17-year-old Alex Lifeson. This is Yes. He fucking grew up with Yes, and here's his best pal playing. I mean, it was
playing with them. Yeah.
So great to watch him, singing along and air guitaring. So it was great. And the other great thing was just meeting so many wonderful people, meeting Arnold Pineda from Journey, and meeting, Joan Baez. What a beautiful, I got a kiss from Joan Baez.
Did you,
just all these people. Who's that?
Jeff Lynne?
I didn't. And that was a bummer. That was one of the only bummers. Huge ELO fan.
Oh yeah. I love them.
And about 5 miles from where we were in Brooklyn to film this. I grew up, and one of my first albums at age 11, first couple albums, I had a New World record and Out of the Blue.
Oh yeah.
So I was 11 so that album set me up for prog rock and stuff like that.
I would
So
say that they were my prog gateway drug.
oh, absolutely. Same here.
Yellow,
Same here. And
hands
and
down.
and at the same time on the radio, things like Parliament and Taste of Honey, Boogie Oogie Oogie, and so that's why I always love when Stephen Wilson again, where he talks about listening to Georgia Moroder and Donna Summer, as well as Pink Floyd and the Bee Gees, and I really understand that because that's kind of how I came up. But no, Jeff Lynne and ELO, they played, and I remember thinking, oh man, if I'd love to run into him and say hi, but didn't get to. But so the whole experience, man, the whole 4 or 5 days rehearsing, hanging out there, seeing all these great bands, top notch, really a spectacular thing. I know it's popular to hate the Hall of Fame and hate the Grammys, and I don't get it, man. Again, they're not making bombs. They're not feeding heroin to children.
No, and
it's music.
It's I remember what Neil said when Rush got in there. He goes, we didn't think this was really a big deal, but it kind of is. Once you get there, it's kind of like, yeah, this is pretty damn cool.
It's great. There's problems. We could critique all kinds of stuff, but I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a couple of times, and it's spectacular. It's like a museum of all the stuff we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
The tornado of guitars in the lobby and all that.
Amazing. And do you know when you're on tour, everyone goes in for free? Did you know that?
No.
Yes. A lot of people don't know that. So I've been twice for free. If you're on tour, even like a little bit, we went with Project Object one time. If you're a band on tour, you go to the front and you say, hey, all 8 of us were on this tour. They'll let in 8, 10 people. You just have to prove it. You show a tour laminate or pull up on your phone, like, this is us, here's a picture of us. We're on tour. And they just have this honorable tradition. They say, you're a touring band, come on in.
Nice. Another question. Any special memories of the tour with Todd a year or 2 ago?
Such special memories. I'm having
Todd Rundgren, that is.
Of course. I'm having a Reka vodka with Pellegrino right now, which goes right to Todd's. But he was because Reka is from Reykjavik. It's from Iceland. So that's funny you asked that. So quick memories on that are I did a few tours with the Celebrating David Bowie. Great outfit.
Oh wow, yeah, I saw some footage of that.
Amazing.
Adrian play those songs was amazing.
Oh, just amazing. And being able to tour with Mike Garson and Carmine Rojas and Jerry Leonard and all these people that played with Zappa. Before I didn't slip. Belew played with Zappa. All these people that played with Bowie, Mike Garson, as I said. So jump ahead to another tour where we had Adrian Belew and we had Davey. I'm forgetting his last name, but Elvis Costello's longtime bass player was in that lineup. Angelo Moore from Fishbone. Mike Urbano, Todd's drummer from Nearly Human era. So we rehearsed in LA, which is spectacular. And I had met Todd many times, huge Todd fan. He's one of the most important artists for me. I'd met him a bunch of times. So it was spectacular to guitar tech for him and to drive him around in LA a little bit. And then to fly to Iceland. He had never been there, remarkably. We talked a lot about that. He said, yeah, I've been everywhere, but you don't go to Iceland unless you're going there. There's no kind of stop off.
Right.
So that was really cool to experience Iceland with him and his wife, Michelle Rundgren. Really nice. And we did 2 shows at this place called the Harpa Theater, an opera house in Reykjavik. And it just was great. It wasn't sold out. It was during some kind of holiday weekend or something there, so it was kind of one of those, it clashed, but with a Reykjavik orchestra, it was with the local orchestra and with this killer all-star band and M. Greiner, who was also there, who sang with Bowie in the 90s. Just great. But Todd is one thing that was amazing was he's learning this Bowie material, which is Bowie stuff's weird, especially some of these songs with really weird lyrics, that don't repeat, and they're very
The arrangements are kind of unusual sometimes too.
very narrative things, and so there's a couple songs where it wasn't just rebel rebel da da da, and you kind of got it after you've memorized the verses. No, um, um, and for completists, Todd produced Sean Cassidy's album Wasp. Do you know that album? There you go. I
Yeah.
knew you knew that album. And the album opens with Rebel Rebel, and big fans of Utopia should definitely check that record out because the band is Utopia.
Right.
So
I could think of a few others, Bad Out of Hell, and that album from
yeah, that's
Steve
got other
Howe.
people, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Chasm Sultan on that, but for a record that's only the Utopia band, Steve Hillage L has them on it too. But anyway, so there he is memorizing some of these tunes, and he was using an iPad in the rehearsal, and he had just got off tour. That's what blew my mind. I mean, I set him up in a hotel, and I think he had like 2 days of rest from a fucking tour. He was on a lengthy tour, like 2 days off, rest, learn some Bowie, and start rehearsing. So we rehearsed for like 3 days. And this guy, I watched him go from 0 to 100, and he's not memorizing these tunes at first. He's reading an iPad. We do a couple rehearsals, and we did the run-through gig. And I remember he was like not liking this, that he had to look at an iPad. He never did that. And I remember we were finished with the gig, and then we had like 2 days off to go to Iceland. And I remember him saying, "Well, that's it. Just gonna work on these tunes. And he memorized all that shit in like 48 hours.
Wow.
I mean, that dude. I mean, he's not normal. I mean, he's churning out records at 72. He's churned one out every 18 months. To Daniel X comment, actually, he kind of proves that he's right about that, because that's why there's a Todd Rundgren. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Right.
That's it, man. When you're Olympic level, when you're gold level, and he's gold medal, man. So I watched that for whatever it was, 10 days, and as a fan, it just took my respect for him to another level, because super down-to-earth guy. He's a perfectionist. He wants the sound right. He will not stand for a buzzy monitor or something not happening, but he's cool about it. He's just like, yeah, take care of it. And the thing people need to realize, people ask me all the time about teching, is you have to take care of it. Don't make them ask twice. That's the whole book right there. Just fucking do it. But a lot of times in life and in jobs, and I've worked in offices, I've worked in restaurants, I've worked in retail, there's an aesthetic where sometimes people just don't do their job. You got to ask 3 times. Jones, can I have the report on that Atwater contract? Oh, sir, yeah, I didn't. Well, let's have that tomorrow. And then Jones doesn't do it, and we just put up with it. We put up with it. Retail, whatever. And that's the key. People ask all the time about my job. The first fucking thing is get it done. Anticipate what they want, learn their habits, learn what they like, and get it done. Have it done before they get there. That's it. And so with Todd, again, I had to just do that. I had to, within just observe, see what he likes, see what he wants, see the way he wants things to sound and to set up, and you just do it. And so people should look for that video, though, because you have Todd Rundgren with all these greats with an orchestra doing Bowie music. And then being in Iceland for the first time in my life, wow. I mean, what an otherworldly place. I hope to go back. I didn't have that much time off. We had a bit, and we walked around. And I'm a colossal Bjork fan, so listen to her most of the time. Being in Iceland, and Sigur Rós and some other Iceland stuff. But beautiful country, amazing people, and yeah, great memory.
Well, it's interesting, and I think you're well known for your Zappa tribute, but you have an equally cool Bowie tribute.
Yes, I that one's cool because I'm a side man, and
okay.
and people could check out whambambowieband.com. Easy to remember, whambambowieband.com. And by the way, if people punch in andrechumley.com, you'll find everything I do. Just spell my name right. And but Wham Bam Bowie Band is great, and it's led by a guy named Mark Casson, who sounds great. He's from England, so he has a little bit of that English accent, singing in an American style a little bit. But a lot of fun. Great band.
You know, there's one down here in Atlanta. It's called Rome Newton and the Band That Fell to Earth. My old friend.
That's right.
Alan Welty Green's the keyboard player.
I know Alan well.
I've seen him a number of times because usually my the guy that the singer from my band, when we go out, you know, sometimes we go out in our instrumental mode and we do our Steely Dan meets Rush at Frank's barbecue kind of music.
Awesome. Yeah.
And other times we just go out and play covers, but we play really cool stuff. You know, we'll play Steely Dan and we'll play The Police and Stevie Wonder and Roundabout. You know,
right.
Lay that on the people to do it well, and it's still a stunning piece of music to lay on in a live setting. So fun. And I actually have been part of some Bowie tributes because despite the tribute band, we have a tribute night. So that's actually the last tribute we did. We did one back in February, and a really good lineup. We had a really good Bowie, very low. We had to transpose a few things. But
not the album, but his voice.
Yeah, really low. Yeah, great job though. And I think my favorite song was Absolute Beginners. You ever play that one?
No, love that one.
Yeah, that was kind of, because it's like I always kind of learn a few that I wasn't really familiar with before, and I kind of fall in love with a couple of them, and that was my favorite out of that batch, I think.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite artists. Got to see Bowie a few times, you know, which is, of course, poignant now. But my only wish for this band is that it's funny. We had a gig April 4th. We were gonna play, and that was one of the first kind of canceled things. But my hope, when we get back, is to do some of the later material. You know, the latest we got was like Fashion and Ashes to Ashes, and then we did something from the next day. We did Where Are We Now? That beautiful song. But we never, you know, the singer really wasn't and isn't that much of a fan of kind of
we did Lazarus too, and Lazarus, and it was very powerful.
Love to do it.
Man, that was one of the best songs out of the whole night, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that.
And you know, another one that's really interesting that's harder to do than it seems on the outside is Fame, because there's like 3 different guitar parts interlocking there, and you really need 3 guitar players to make it work.
That was well, part of my, here's another thing about when I do the Bowie thing. For me, it's secretly, not so secretly, because I've said this on stage and to this man, it's also a tribute to Adrian Belew, my dear friend, because what I do, and he came up and introduced us one night in Nashville. Fans can punch that in. Wham Bam Bowie Band, Belew, Nashville, and you see him come up and he tells his Zappa Bowie story, but the whole thing's a tribute to me, to Adrian, because I'm doing so much work. I'm covering Carlos Alomar parts. I almost said Mick Ronson. I'm covering Mick Ronson parts. It's certainly a tribute to Mick Ronson, largely. I'm covering some David Torn moments, you know, the later stuff. All these amazing players, you know, Earl Slick. There's some, I mean, you know, so I'm sure I forgot a couple. Herbie Flowers, of course, the early stuff. But Adrian, I'm kind of thinking about the 1990 Bowie tour.
Right, the Sound and Vision.
Sound and Vision, which is, I saw that tour as well, and that's one of the most unsung tours. And Bowie fans, or even if you're casual Bowie fans, you need to know that that's a very weird tour because it's the only live tour that Bowie didn't release anything of. Maybe the estate will now do so, but a very interesting tour because he came off of the stadium tours in the late 80s and Tin Machine, and he went back to doing Bowie greatest hits. He had that Ryko disc greatest hits, but he never represented that tour, not a DVD, not an album. But you gotta go on YouTube. There's about 6 shows, I think, 8 shows.
I've seen some good stuff, and I've seen some songs that he didn't really touch again,
that's it.
like
Yeah.
Young Americans, and it was interesting to see Adrian play all those sax parts on the guitar. You know,
that's what I'm saying with my tribute thing, because when I watch videos from that tour, it's also the most stripped down thing. I think he brought that Tin Machine aesthetic of, hey, less is more. But that tour is just 5-piece band. It was Adrian's trio at the time he brought in, and it's just Bowie and 4 other guys, and there's Adrian with guitar synth and all kinds of effects and pedals and things, and he duplicated all the parts, man. And so I approached this band like that, where I'm using guitar synthesis, I'm using guitar modeling, so I can go into acoustic parts. I can do songs like Quicksand, that's got a 12-string in the beginning, and a vibes in the beginning, and I cover all that shit. You've seen us. And I try to. So when I'm doing that, I'm thinking, what would Adrian Belew do? He would cover all the sounds. So I'm triggering strings. I'm triggering little trumpet parts in stuff from Hunky Dory. So it's really fun, and I've had some great conversations with Adrian about his aesthetic, where he's covering all this stuff no matter what band he's in. And so yeah, Wham Bam Bowie Band. Thanks for
look it up, folks. Awesome stuff. What was out of all of Steve's guitars, which one's your favorite?
Tough one.
It's an amazing collection, and he mixes it up, doesn't he? Depending on the tour, sometimes he'll bring stuff like the Switchmaster out, and
exactly. There's always about 5. There's always about 11 guitars, actually. I was thinking ES5 there for the Switchmaster. There's always about 11 guitars with the double neck steel. There's always a 175, and I was fortunate. The first year I toured with him, 2011, we had the actual 175, the one that you see in the 60s videos all the way through.
The one he bought the plane tickets for.
Yes, and it sat next to him. And sometime, and then I worked for some other people, Greg Lake and Mo and Derek Trucks for a couple of years there, and I wasn't with Yes, like 2012, 13, 14. Then I've been back with him ever since. And in the interim, he had a bad experience on a flight. They really messed with him, as they do with guitarists, and he got nervous on the Mr. Gibson, they call it, the number 1. And he said, you know what? It's time to. And he's not that guy. He brings every guitar on tour. His philosophy is, they're here to be used. They do me no good sitting in Southwest England in a glass case. What's that?
Right.
So I've learned that there's many Zen lessons from Mr. Steve Howe. And one of them is, these are instruments. You play them. So he's got the Les Paul Jr. that's on the Steve Howe album and Tales. He's got the 175s and the Fender Tele that's on all these records. So my favorite then, so difficult, but I'm going to go with the stereo ES345.
I thought you might say that's the one he used on Close to the Edge, right?
Close to the Edge, and it's on Tales, and it's on the Steve Howe record, the Steve Howe album. It's so hard, but I think that a little more robust for rock and roll than the 175. I love the 175s. I don't own any jazz boxes, but wow, that guitar. But it's a toss-up between that and the Tele, the 55 blonde Tele.
Sure, the layer guitar.
Oh, that guitar. And I don't own a Tele. It's one of the guitars I don't own. And every year when I get to the rehearsal room and open the guitars again, haven't seen them in 8 months, and you clean it, you tune everything. And he has a luthier in London that looks at his guitars every year. So he really takes care of them. So by the time I get them, it's great, because they were set up 3 weeks ago or something, and they're clean and everything. But when I pick up that Tele every year, I go, that's it. Got to buy a Tele. What are you doing? Right. Get on, and so for a couple of days you're on reverb, like, should I do it? Right. And I never do. But that Tele is, but the 345, you've got that filter, that 6-position filter, that is godlike. Have you played a 345?
No.
Dude, it's. I know you've played 335s.
Yeah,
You have one.
I
right?
have a 339.
You know, it takes both of those, and it just supersizes it. You're just getting this creamy. You play it, and you're like, okay, caressive steel.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Farewell to Kings. Because Alex is the other guy that really used a lot of 345. But it's just this creamy, incredible sound, man. The pickups. Wow, that guitar. And if you run it in stereo as it was designed, forget about it.
Does he run it in stereo live sometimes?
You know, it's funny. So here's what we do. We have a little custom cable I've got a couple of them made up, so I have spares. And it just takes stereo and you know, just sums it to a mono output. So he actually uses it in mono, but it's both pickups, so he doesn't lose anything. So it's interesting. So and it won't work with just a regular mono TS. You won't get the full both of the pickups. And when you bought it back in the 50s, they gave you a special cable that split out so you could put it in 2 amps. Isn't that cool?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They intended for you to. So we use it in mono, but I rigged up a patch or two on his Line 6 Helix, which is what he uses. And we tried it out one time. I invented a stereo thing for him, and he was like, "Wow, okay." And he kind of said, "Take note of that." Maybe he doesn't like to change stuff in a tour. Like once we've, you know, so we checked it out, and he kind of said, "Remind me of this next time we're on tour," which would have been in March. I think that's one of the fun things for me, and one of the things that keeps me working with some of these people is I'm a guitar nerd, and I like gear, and I've grown up with all this gear, and so I can help them often if they're into the electronic side and the effects processing side and looping and all these things, modeling guitars. It's been great to be able to help these guys get to their goal, because a lot of techs are, you know, they kind of stop at the analog stuff. Unfortunately, not all of them, of course. There's a lot of techs out there, but I meet some techs sometimes that kind of go, "Die, who cares? Ableton, it's nonsense, and MIDI pickups, it's garbage." That's a shame, because you know, it's one more gig you could do, right?
Right.
So yeah.
All the more colors to work with.
Yeah.
Okay. So what makes a great venue versus a fairly mediocre one? I imagine you guys play some of the nicer places, but are there a few that come to mind you really love versus a few that just kind of suck?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. And I come at that on 3 levels. As a tech, showing up in a crew, getting off a bus, walking in the morning. I come at that as a tour manager. So I'm in there worrying for the band first, like, did they get everything right? And I come at it as a performer, where I've showed up around the world to play. And in all cases, the first answer is, do they have hot water?
Seems like such a simple request, but
here's what's funny, and that's the equivalent. If anyone remembers the old story of Van Halen and the brown M&Ms.
Sure.
So we all laughed about that when we heard that in real time in 1981 or something. Oh, what a bunch of prima donnas. And I think later on, the real story came out, which I'm sure you know, which is we did that. We put that on the rider.
Just to see if anyone was paying attention. Right.
Did they read all the way to page 5? Did they go to the details? So what the tour manager would do is go right into the dressing room and look and go, okay, I'm going to have to, let's drill down here. They just threw a fucking bag of M&Ms here. Let me see. Oh, it's the wrong cold cuts. That's not the amp we wanted. So, you know, you can interpolate. So the hot water is one for me. You go in and you usually, you know, you got to take a piss. You've been on a long ride. You go in, and that's one of the first things I check. And it's funny, Sean, I've shown that there's such a correlation, because if a venue is cheapskating out on the hot water, look out. No, seriously, it almost all the time it means they're going to cut a bunch of other corners, and this is so I go look for that, and then that's, of course, I'm being a little humorous, but there's some seriousness to that. After that, though, it is my next question is I meet the sound person. It's usually a man or a woman. Meet the sound person, and I say, hey, how are you? You know, you want to be very friendly and look those folks in the eye because you're going to work together all night.
Right.
You can break your show. But that's where my first test is. I say, hey, how are you? Great. We've been emailing. Yeah, yeah. Sean, Michelle, Joey, whatever. I say, cool. Did you print out that input list? And you have my input list and the monitor requests and stuff? And that's the moment, Sean, because the good ones say, absolutely, got it right here. Or they say, yeah, here it is. I got it on my phone. And you go, good. So all the time I spent on putting together that friggin' PDF was worth it. And it's the that's when it goes well. The ones who say, no, we'll figure it out, uh-oh.
That's a red flag.
Always a problem. Always a problem.
Yeah. So is the sound person always with the venue, or do you have somebody that kind of comes along and gives it the last tweak?
Well, it depends on the size of the band, and some artists I tour with, Adrian Belew, for instance. Sometimes we tour with a sound guy, sometimes we have it. So if you tour with Robert Fraza on sound or someone else, then you're done. You just roll in. We have a thumb drive, and if they have the same board, the whole show comes up. But it's a mix. Sometimes, a lot of times with Adrian Belew, for instance, I have to work with the sound guy and set up the monitor mixes and run out front and kind of work with them and say, hey, man, too much kick drum. It's not a disco show. Turn this down. Turn that. I want to hear a little more, click on the bass attack or something, the bass guitar. So you kind of work with them. So it's a mix. But it starts there. And you notice I'm spending a lot of time with sound. The back could be rickety. This could be wrong. That could be wrong. But it's got to sound good. So that's kind of the first kind of thing you spend time with, and you suss out. And you've done a lot of that before in what we call the advance. I mean, going in, you really request some specs, and you can look at the website, and so you have a real good idea going in. Oh, this is going to be the place with that fill in the blank, crappy system. But so it's about the sound and visibility and the comfort for the fans. You want to know they can see well. And then the second level is that it be, and it's funny, people would think this is the first level, but it's the second level, the backstage. Clean, comfortable, temperature adjustable. There's a bathroom for the band only. Come on. It's always a bummer when you're in a club and the band has to go out into the crowd, make it to the bathroom and back. Wow, that really is a bummer. I mean, it just means because you're going to get stopped by 22 people and
right.
So that's one of the complaint type venues. But as I say, even if the backstage is a little uncomfortable, we figure it out. The band goes back to the hotel or they stay in the bus if we have a bus. But the sound has to be good, the visibility for everyone in the club. And then you go from there, how's the food? Is it shady? Are we going to get paid? All those things.
Right. Any on-stage mishaps come to mind? I noticed Billy was telling us a story about how one night he thought Steve was going to play 2 acoustic numbers, but he just played 1. So the next thing he knows, he's like half a arena away and he's being paged over the PA.
Right.
He's running back.
He was having a cigarette or something. Yeah.
And his shoes are slippery and he falls face first. And I was that's got to be a nightmare.
The story of being a tech is be prepared, which I learned in Boy Scouts. Others may have learned that elsewhere, but be prepared. Have 3 of everything. Have spares. Have and Steve's gig is a little terrifying because we only have 1 telly, for instance. So I got to make sure the telly's in perfect shape and has new strings and da-da-da and da-da-da because there isn't a second telly. So that's kind of one of the things that does keep me on my toes. Nightmare. Well, one going back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I batted like a 999 on that night because everything worked except in my nervousness they did roundabout. So I take that blue Line 6 guitar that's got the modeling acoustic.
Variax.
Variax, and he does, of course, the beautiful beginning of Roundabout and the very end.
Right.
And then I had to. It was crazy because my usual thing, I can see him the whole time. Not so Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had this production wall, so I can only watch him to the screen, and so it was terrifying because I'm much further away from my guy. I can't get to him. So anyway, the other song they did was "Owner of a Lonely Heart,"
right,
where Steve played bass.
Right. And that's one where you ran out and picked it up at the music store and then took it back when the gig was over. Am I right?
That's good. That story got out there. It's not like a secret story, but did I tell you that story? Yeah. I think I didn't. Did I leave? Maybe we sent someone. But yeah, I called. He said get me a Rickenbacker, please. And I said, sure, Steve. I made some calls. I friends at Guitar Center and stuff, and you're right. We might have picked it up, but we got him this Rick. So anyway, that became a crazy gig for me because all of a sudden now I have Steve Howe's electric guitar gig and his Line 6 gig, which takes all these input boxes and stuff. But now he wants a bass rig.
Yeah, what are you going to play that through? Right.
So we got a bass amp. I forget what, Ampeg or something. But now it's just twice as much stuff. I'm like, oh, man, on a night with TV cameras and cables to roll over and guys yelling in megaphones. And it was nuts. So my screw up was, so I ran out, gave him the Rickenbacker, took the 175, moved some things around, changed some programs, and ran back around this maze of stuff and forgot to go back again to get the blue acoustic modeling thing
still
out of there.
Sticking out there.
Oh man! I mean, I don't feel suicidal because it was one of these gigs where shit's in my way and I couldn't get to it. Still my fault. So I get all the way back and I'm watching him in the monitors, and I see him, turning around and kind of pointing, and I was like, oh shit! So I run back out. So it's cool. So if you watch that video, obviously they edit around me. But if you watch that video, I guess there's a bit of him, and then it cuts away to Trevor Rabin or something.
I'll keep an eye out. I have the box set from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's
so that's one. Here, another one was with Al Di Meola one time. We were at the, oh my God, I couldn't even remember, but a jazz festival in Switzerland somewhere, and he's having some problems, and he calls me up. And I wiggle his guitar. Oh shit! Bad cable. Pull the cable. I run out with the cable. Pull the cable out. Put another cable in. And this was in Switzerland, so we didn't fly with all of our rig. We got it all from these guys. And I put the cable in. He starts playing again. Within a minute, he's motioning again. He's like, and I'm like, what the? It was another bad cable. They had two bad cables in the back line. And what that taught me is that's the last thing you'll expect, right?
Sure.
The last thing you'll expect if you replace with a seemingly brand new. So that really taught me that, have 3 spares, and brand new shit, even if you've tested it, can break. So that those are a couple. I'm knock on wood though. No. Absolutely colossal nightmares. I can think of. Yeah.
A question for you. You know the Les Paul that he used on Tormato?
Yeah.
Why did he get rid of that one? Because that's it seems like his collection he really holds on to. But I've seen that when obviously it was sold and somebody bought it.
Right.
Video of it on YouTube.
I haven't asked him that specifically, but I'll say he sells a lot of guitars. He probably sells more than we think because he very quietly sells a few. He's not big on, putting a Steve Howe here and I'm selling. People find out ultimately, but he tends to. He has a couple favorite dealers in London and in Nashville, and I think there's one in somewhere else in the Southwest that he loves getting guitars. And he has sold a few through these brokers. One of my guitar students has a couple of Steve Howe guitars. So he does let go of a lot of guitars, actually. So I don't know specifically on that one, but I think.
I hear that thing is super heavy. Maybe it was just a weight thing.
Could be that. The Les Paul that we do use is kind of a 90s, he calls it the Roland, and they custom installed for him like a GK pickup. So it's got the 13 pin out, and I think he might have even used that on GTR tour.
I remember that. It's gone by quite a ways now. The red one, right?
The red one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been on GTR, but
Okay.
that's a great one too. And funny, again, one thing that's amazing about Steve is one of the many things is he really wants to make sure here's the timbre, here's the sound on this record. So, for instance, when we did, only thing I've ever been on tour with them from Tormato that they've done is "Don't Kill the Whale."
Right.
And he does it on the Les Paul. He's kind of experimented. He did it on the 175 a couple times, or maybe something else. But ultimately, he's very much like if it was a telly on this part of the song, I'm bringing him a telly and I'm taking it back. And I really appreciate that. He really, because guitarists, sometimes you're playing a Steely Dan song and you're like, well, I don't have a 335, but I'm playing it on a Strat or whatever.
Well, I know how it is too. It's like, I could easily bring 4 guitars and swap them out all night, but I'm more of the mind of just taking one and playing all night and just
yeah, that's exactly right.
Or maybe I'll bring one for one set and one for another.
Sure.
It's, okay. Sometimes I had to do things differently though. It's like tribute once. I found myself bringing something that's tuned down a half step, versus standard. You know how it is.
Absolutely. Well, the beauty of Steve is
necessity.
That's right. Steve has somebody to do that also. He can, but in tribute to Steve, if you look at those old videos, and I know you look at 77, 79, all those tours, some of those tours in the round, he's on stage with like 8 guitars around him, right?
Right.
On stands. So he teched himself.
Right.
And from what I understand, and there were techs, doing what I do at that point. But from what I understand, for most of his career, he would not. There was no other techs doing, touching his guitars. That's kind of a past 20 years kind of a thing.
I'm trying to think of the name of the guy before you. Shoes, yes.
Yeah. Well, there was Joe Camo, and then Shoes before, right?
Okay, yeah, but, Shoes. I think I don't know if he's from Atlanta, but I know somebody that was like lived next door to one of his relatives or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, Shoes is legendary, and Joe Camo, the tech immediately preceding me, is now the tour manager. So
okay.
He's still there, and he trained me on the 2011 tour, which you saw, which was with Chris Squire.
Right.
Well. So yeah.
Yeah. Any Chris Squire stories to share?
Chris, lovely man. Loved him. He was so kind to me and wonderful. I'm working on a book, people. So if you want to, just follow me on social media, I'll announce it. AndreChumley.com, and you can figure it out there. But in my book, it'll be little stories, and some of them 1 page long. But a couple Chris Squire stories. But I remember him, sense of humor, dour sense of humor. He talked very slowly. Yeah, I think we're going there tomorrow. So very slow. He's a big bear of a man. His hand was like 2 of yours.
Yeah.
I mean, my little hand would be in his hand. Wow, because those are the hands, man.
Right. That Rick is so small in his hands.
Oh, come on, man.
Think about it, kind of like Stanley Clark,
You can't have the tones on Close to the Edge with little hands. So yeah, kindness, humor. One of the golden moments was he would do at the end of Starship Trooper when he took that little solo at the end. Worm, I guess, before Steve does the solo, he would do a little thing. But he would do this thing where he would just jump. He would do this.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Right? He would do this hop. And I loved it. And one day on the tour, just talking to him at catering or something, and he loved hot peppers too. So we would bond around that. His wife, Scotty, and their baby would be on tour, and they always had hot peppers on the rider. So suddenly I'm realizing, what's this? Bowls of jalapenos, those back. Oh, Chris loves those. Oh, this is awesome, because they would only eat 2 or 3 of them, and so I'd always. So we would talk about habaneros and hot peppers and stuff. So that's another thing about Chris people might not know. And so we were talking one day. And I said, Chris, I really love when you do that, And he's like, "Oh, do you like that, huh? Yeah, that's fun." And I'll never forget. And again, when these people are gone, it's such a poignant memory. I'll never forget. It was towards the end of the tour, and I'm standing there on the side of the stage. They're doing that tune, and he just happened to look over, and he just saw me, and right before he did that, and he just kind of went, and he did the thing, and so it's those little moments because, look, you're just a family on the road. I mean, it removes all the rock star stuff. They're just human beings.
Sure.
They're just, and you just kind of go, wow, they wrote these 22 albums that we listen to. So yeah, hearing him play though, and this is a common thing with Greg Lake and John Wetton, and man, I just give thanks that I worked for and with those three, the stalwarts.
Yeah, the progressive rock canon,
Yeah, and the same thing with all 3 of them. And I didn't tech for Chris, but I tech for the other 2 guys. But you would try out their bass, like you try out the John Wetton bass and sound guy. Yeah, a little more. Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. Let's do the distortion pedal. You try it all, and then he comes out, and you're like, okay, that's not even the same instrument I was just holding. How is he getting that sound?
Yeah, I remember helping him unwrap his Zahn bass at near
John.
That was kind of like a little moment for me and my friend Dale.
Awesome.
And he was so proud of it, showing it. He's like, look, there's no knobs on the front. You got to turn it over Allen wrench. It's so sleek and awesome looking. Yeah.
That's right. He decided years ago, why do I have knobs? I want everything up, leave it, and if I ever need to adjust. But that was the other thing about Chris. You'd hear his tech and his amazing tech, Richard Davis, who teched for all kinds of people. But mostly, Chris and Robert Plant for many years. But he would come out and he'd play, and it sounded great, and he'd hit the bass pedals, and then out would come Chris for the sound check. And again, you go, and you're like, what the fuck? It's not, what? So people need to understand, it's in the hands of a lot of these people. They could play any instrument.
What are some of your favorite live moments in a Yes show? When you could actually enjoy it.
Sure. Yes, I'm always on edge. You're always worrying.
Anytime the bass pedals come into play is one of those big emotions.
That's a big one. But moments for me that are absolutely that I just smile. If they do Siberian Khatru, wow, that is just
that's the top 5 Yes song for me, man.
Dude, it's epic. And Steve's got the 345, so you're hearing that. It just sounds ridiculous. B, that riff, that opening riff, and it's Chuck Berry filtered through, some psychedelia filtered through some jazz. He's such a big Chuck Berry, Chet Atkins, Hank Marvin fan. That's what makes Steve Howe and Les Paul and Mary Ford. He loved all that stuff, and loves to this day. So that song, and then the solo in that song, because when he does that last solo, oh man,
do you?
It's just the last solo is that's a special moment for me.
Would you say it was a little different every night after?
That's the thing. Absolutely. He's playing it pretty close. He maps out those changes, and there's a lot of the same licks, but again, hearing it every night, I love hearing just little subtle changes, and he always does these little kind of Chuck Berry bunny hops.
Oh yeah, you can tell he's in a really good mood when he does that.
He's in a really good mood. So that's what brings that song together too. He loves that song. So that's one moment.
That's a great tune, and I love that they never tried to recreate it or write a song in that vein.
That's true. Yeah. No, it stands alone. One of my favorite songs. Whenever they do, and You and I.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that middle section is so
huge, and that's another one too. I'll never forget. Whatever tour it was, the first time they did that, since I was working for them, maybe it was 2016 or something. and we get the set list ahead of time to start thinking about it. And I have a couple email conversations with Steve, and he'll say, okay, well, I'm going to bring out the Steinberger, 12 string, because we're going to do Awaken, and I want you to do this and get some strings for that, and I think we're going to use the telly on the end. So we map things out. But I remember when and you and I came up, and I was sitting there talking to Robin, and I said, oh shit, this is going to be a beast, because this has acoustic, whichever electric he's using, it's got the steel, and then it goes back to the acoustic and back to the electric and then back to the steel. And I just remember going, oh man, this is going to be, and sure enough, that's the song where it starts out with the acoustic. Then I got to move the acoustic because the steel's going to slide in.
Right.
Then I got to move it back. Then I got to turn on some effects pedals. So that's a beautiful song to listen to, a fun song, but it's also fun because you do not breathe. I'm in the song. I have to know every measure. I have to anticipate parts, and that's one of the bonuses of getting into this gig is that sometimes on gigs, like with Mo, for instance, I didn't know their music as well. I knew a few things. I had to learn shit, and those guys do a different set every night, so you're always listening to things the night before and stuff. A bonus for Yes was going in knowing all the music,
right,
and so being able to suggest things too. That's always fun to be able to say to Steve, hey Steve, in this song there's a way that I can make a patch where, and Steve's great because he'll be having a cup of tea and he'll just go, okay, yeah, remind me of that. He doesn't he holds his cards close.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, it's always a treat to kind of see them trot out something they haven't done in many years too. Like they did Gates a couple of years ago, right?
Amazing.
First time since Masterwork. Well, no, actually Symphonic, yes, probably 2001,
2, yeah, 1, yeah,
something like that.
Well, yeah, I think they got out there saying it was like 17 years, 18 years.
Yeah.
That was very special too, because watching them rehearse and put that together and so many special moments.
Or like when they did the first side of Tales, that's one that they don't trot out very often. That's probably the least played sidelong epic in the catalog.
It really was, and that was, that was, it was great every night. We joked around in the crew, just saying like, oh man, we're gonna hear this 18 minutes of music every night. And that's one where you can drift off a little bit because, that's one of the ones where he has one guitar and nothing happens. And so you really got to pay attention. And you're sitting there. I got to watch him every move. That's what we do, because Steve does a lot of subtle cues, man. He has a famous thing where he just goes, he might point down, and I have to know, oh, someone threw a wrapper on stage, or, a cable is caught on the edge of his carpet or something. So Steve is the master of little cues. I mean, he will literally just go like this and point to something on his guitar, and I'll look later on and I'll go, wow, okay, the little movable arrow thing on the Les Paul has shifted a little bit or something, So very detailed oriented. But yeah, Tales was another great one. I loved when they did Owner of a Lonely Heart, actually. That was great for a couple reasons, because I thought it was, it's great of Steve to kind of embrace and say, hey, yeah, this was their biggest hit. Sure,
right.
Let's do this. And he added his own little flair to it.
Yeah.
But really great to have him just put on the Strat and rock out.
Well, it's interesting. I've seen him cover that a number of times over the years, and I think the most recent one, it was like the harmonizer was on there, and it was closer to what Rabin did.
Rabin, yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying with Yes? You mean?
Yeah, I would say, like Yes did it back in the 90s, and I think Billy probably played the solos back then.
Right.
And then, but I've seen Steve kind of approach it a number of different ways over the years, I think. And
yeah,
I think it was most satisfying when the harmonizer was on there,
Sure.
Was that your idea?
No, no, he came in programmed with that. The programming is interesting because he works with a fellow named Steve in somewhere in England in an undisclosed
Setting up
location.
all the Line 6 sounds and stuff.
Exactly. So what we have is Steve in his studio, Steve the programming guy, and myself. We all have Line 6 Helix, which I love. Wow, what a revolution!
Is
Man.
it all the floorboard pedal version, or is it like kind of built into
yeah, those guys do. I have the rack one, you know, and I love it, man. It's changed my life.
It seems like you've used Line 6 for 10, 15 years now. And would you say that it's improved every time he's upgraded? Cause
absolutely, they get better and better. You know, they're a funny company because they're when I first worked for him in 2011, he was using the Line 6 Veta. That's an amp, and that, my friend, if you ever see one, get one used. That was one year where they went overboard. The chips are incredible. The whatever the bit rate, sample rates are incredible. That's an amazing amp. When I worked for, and I was so lucky too coming into that because Adrian Belew used one and a satellite, so I really knew that amp, which really helped me my first year with Steve Howe. So the Veta was fantastic, had all the effects in the amp, you know. And then he went to the Bogner one, which was the hybrid tube digital one. And that's a great amp too. And they got Reinhold Bogner, the famous, you know, boutique amp guy.
Right.
I think they blew it because they cheaped out on the transformer and a few different things made in China. And, you know, that could have been a brilliant amp. It sounds awesome. We had to change the transformer out on all of them probably. And then he went to, that's when he had HD 500, again, Line 6. And that was pretty good. I think that could sometimes, you have to be real careful. Sometimes it had that fizzy digital thing happening.
Right.
But he put it into a tube amp. So again, the beauty of some of this stuff is if it's in a tube amp, a lot of guitar snobs out there, and I've met a lot of them on these gigs, and they need to understand, you know, you have someone like Tom Schultz in Boston. That's a lot of solid state stuff. And you know, it's not tubes. Sometimes his amps would be tubes. But my philosophy is it's kind of Duke Ellington. It either sounds good or it doesn't.
Right.
And, you know, there's great sounding digital stuff. There's crappy digital stuff. There's crappy tube amps, you know. So I think with Steve, he just wants it to sound really great. And then he upgraded to the Line 6 Helix. And we've been there for about 4 years. And that's going to be tough to beat, man. They really, I think what happened was Line 6 decided to go after Kemper and Axe Effects.
Right.
And they got bought by Yamaha Ampeg. Did you know that?
Is that a good thing?
I think it's a great thing because it was an influx of a ridiculous amount of resources. Suddenly you have the Yamaha Music Group finances behind you and manufacturing power. So I think that's where Line 6, a lot of guitarists who are snobby about them should go back and check them out in this new era.
Was it like
now they're
was him changing every time Line 6 came out with something new, like an internal quest for something better? Was there ever a time where it's just like, we got this set, it sounds fine, I know you got something new, but leave me alone?
I think we've hit there now with the Helix. Yeah. But I think before that, and being with him for 2 incarnations there, I think, yeah, those other times he was like, this is really good. It's really close. That's the kind of language he would use. He'd say, you know, this is the tone from Yours Is No Disgrace something. And he'd say, that's damn close. It's almost there. And the Helix is the first time I'm hearing him say, wow, that's it. I'm knocked out. This is,
okay. That makes sense.
Well, and sorry, go ahead.
I would say I just noticed a big improvement once he started using the Line 6. It's like,
absolutely.
I remember when he Masterworks and Symphonic, you know, back then he was using like the little Dan Electro beige distortion box,
right?
And I just thought it lacked a lot of oomph.
Yes, those
tone-wise, you know.
Yeah, he had that.
So I think he's gotten much closer to the records.
Absolutely,
thanks to Line 6.
Yeah, especially the most recent couple of tours. And to Line 6's credit, they now have these things called power cabs. Have you seen those, or do you know those? So they're okay.
Power cabinet.
Well, it looks like an amp. It looks like a beautiful amp, you know, with a tweedy kind of a thing. and it's yeah, it's just clean power. There's no tone knobs or anything. It's just volume, and it's a digital hybrid thing. You go in and you pick the microphone, so it's got 414s and SM58s, 57s.
What's the ideal mic to use?
Sennheisers. Those, it's tough to beat those Sennheisers. What are they? 609s, the flat ones that are designed for high pressure. Really hard to beat those. That said, I'm not a guitar miking up amp snob. I mean, you hear so many great things with a 58, which you're not supposed to use.
Sure.
But I would, if I had to pick, and someone said, quick, let's go on the road and let's take some 57s, let's take some Sennheisers. I mean, there's some beautiful, great Shure capsule mics and stuff that are brilliant on guitar. But then you're trying to be in the studio and you're kind of
right.
Yeah, the 609s would have to be my answer. But Line 6 now, they came up with these power cabs. And my buddy Matt Ferguson from Line 6 was right before a tour, and we were all set with our Bogner amps that he used for years. And Matt calls and says, hey, we got these new power cabs. I think he wants to try them out. And I said, bro, we're set up for the tour. And he in my experience, he doesn't really like to change things once we but we're here at Tate Towers, at the rehearsal place in Manheim, Pennsylvania. We're rehearsing here. Clare Brothers actually is where it is.
Right.
Tate Towers is right there too. We're rehearsing. We're here for 10 days. You know what? Send them out. I can't promise anything, but this is the time where he comes in early. We could try some things. So they send this amp out. Maybe there's two of them, so we have stereo. So he send them out. And I told Steve, I said, hey, Steve, tomorrow. Oh, yeah, great. I'll come in a little earlier, So I set it all up, and to the best of my ability. And you could pick the speakers in there, too.
Oh, wow.
There's Jensen's, and there's Marshall speakers, and Fender speakers, and Swamp something, and, all these speakers. And you pick the mic. So I kind of just A-B'd, and I kind of said, yeah, this sounds about right. It was like a Greenback or something, speaker that I picked. And I said, these things sound great. And it's one of my proudest moments because he came in and had his cup of tea. The tea comes first. And he said, oh, these look lovely. Are we set up? Yeah, Steve. And he picked up that guitar and he went, krang. Sounds great. These are great. First chord. What a great story. And the Line 6 guys, they flipped, of course, when they heard that. I mean, that goes in a movie, right?
Sure.
But that's how good they are. They're really, really good, and they've been a hit for them. And where they've been a hit is what they do is they kind of close that missing gap when you're doing modeling guitar. Sometimes you put it right into an amp, it doesn't sound great.
Right.
You put it direct, now it's PA speakers or monitor speakers, and it's missing a little. They've really taken it to that next level. And if you have Kemper or Axe Effects or something, these are great for you because they take it that next step. So we've been using those ever since, two and a half years. He loves them. They sound amazing. And we took it to the next level on the most recent tour where the sound guy, Dean Matson, who's an incredible sound man, I said, Dean, these have mic modeling and direct outs. And oh, really? He hadn't really seen that yet on the back. And I said, and Dean's great because he's very forward thinking. He says, you know what? Let's check these out in sound check in a couple days. And we did. And he made the revolutionary move. He does not mic Steve Howe's guitar amps anymore.
Oh, that's wild. So
they're that good that a very, very stickler with golden ears sound man says, you know what? It's perfect. I sound like I'm in the studio, and I can now take Steve's feed with zero stage noise.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's a real testament to using technology and adding some human warmth to it, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Well, excellent. Well, we should probably take a peek at a few of the questions that came in online and then wrap it up.
Oh yeah. Let's
I'd love to have you on again another night when we can talk about.
Love shooting the shit with you, bro.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. The time just flies once you get going here. Next
it
thing,
does. Look at this. A couple hours already. Cliff Stankiewicz from the Genesis band, right?
And those guys are so good. I mean, I just was blown away when I saw them a couple of years ago down here, and they're just awesome people for starters, and
so cool.
And their attention to detail is just so fantastic. And you know, I would rather see them play Genesis than see Genesis play Genesis at this point. I know it sounds crazy, but I just feel like that music is still majestic in a live setting, and you catch them in kind of a medium-sized venue, and it's just, it's powerful, you know, definitely.
No, absolutely. And I saw that show, the one show they've done this summer, you know, in Charlotte, right? Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah. So good stuff.
Hope to see more of them, because they're just, you know, I enjoyed their stream where they played all of Duke a few weeks ago, and then they did another one where they played all kinds of stuff, and it was wonderful.
Deep tracks. Some great people on here. There's Dan Berg.
The juggler.
The juggling genius. Good to see you, Dan. And Cliff, thank you for hanging out, man. Cliff's got some great stories because he's met all these people, Chris, and you know, he shook Steve Howe's hand. Yes, that's very rare, bro.
I mean, I was to say.
Cliff just went to bed. It's funny because I was doing some booking for Cliff's Pink Floyd band, and we had a gig here in Asheville the day the lockdown started. Yes, in fact, they were getting in their cars to come up here about 2 hours later, and I literally, the guys from the club called me and said, you know, the governor's going to make an announcement at 10 o'clock, and it's not going to be good.
Not looking good, right?
And this is early on. It was unthinkable. We're like, what? What are you talking about? Close the gate. Come on, it's fine. And so I texted the guys in Pink as Floyd, Cliff, and I said, stand by, bro, because and sure enough, 10 o'clock that morning, and so you know, they were 8 hours away from doing the gig. And
yeah, I know the feeling. You know, I had a really great one lined up at the best venue in town of that size, this place called the Vista Room.
Oh yeah.
And we were going to play with you know, probably the most successful tribute band here in town is one for Pink Floyd. They're called Rumors.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they also have a side tribute to Tom Petty. And
right.
A lot of the same people play in both of them, and often they open themselves. So they were going to have our ELO tribute open for them.
Wow.
They're really looking forward to that. And
that got killed because of Corona.
Yeah. No, we actually played one show on New Year's Eve at Smith's, and you know, the future was looking bright until all this happened. But I'm hoping we can find, you know, there's a really good outdoor venue that I was at recently where the stage is huge and it's all open air, and it's like a courtyard with picnic tables that are really spread out.
Okay.
I thought this could work, you know. So I'm hoping maybe this fall we can do some outdoor stuff.
Absolutely. No, and I highly applaud any experimental things. There's a few places in my town, and I live in a very tourist town, so it's a very interesting math going on where we're trying to manage things, but tourists are pouring in. So it's tough. Numbers are going up. We have all these people from Florida driving in.
It's scary stuff, you know. I mean,
trying to manage it. Yeah.
You know, just the thought of playing inside is really not appealing at the moment. But outside, when the breeze is blowing and everybody's really fall apart.
Right.
You know, I've had some success just hanging out and having a barbecue once a week with some friends under the same conditions, and we're all fine. So
that's awesome. And right, cross fingers, because everyone's fine till they're not, but just keep being super careful. And you know, I think one of the things and this is, by the way, my favorite venue in town. It's gone now. You know this place, the Mothlight?
No.
What a bummer, man. But my favorite place.
Vista Room had to go under also, unfortunately.
Really? Oh, that was a great place. Yeah, man. No, and I've heard of a few around the country, and this will continue. I think, you know, one thing I hope more and more people do as time goes on is we've got to do two things, and the main thing is embrace the science. This is math. It's science, guys. You know, all the conspiracy things, people mail them into me. I just have one question all the time. How did they convince 215 countries to get in on this? I'm all for some kind of provable thing because, sneaky things happen. Tuskegee experiment, all kinds of things. But really, guys,
a
215.
A global scam of that level, like everybody would screw their countries for the sake of screwing over another country's leader.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's now, have these people ever been a project manager at work? You can't even get 10 people to keep their mouth shut about something.
Thank you. Now, having said that, do governments exploit an open situation? Yes, and that's probably happening around the planet. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to get into the political thing, but I will say on the science thing, I wish people would wake up every day and maybe check their calendar. I forget the exact number. I checked it recently, but we're something like 253 or 260 days of knowledge of this virus. People need to respect that. If you count from November 20th, when it was first kind of identified, people, I just don't think that's really, really clear to people. Yes, it's a cousin of SARS. It's a cousin of MERS. It's a coronavirus, so it's in the family of the flu and the common cold. But that's like comparing a house cat to a jaguar.
Right. This is a fresh breed.
The biology,
know little about,
and so we've wasted a lot of time with people, armchair science, kind of saying, well, it's just a coronavirus, and it says on this can of Lysol that I can kill those. So what's the fuss?
Right. Well, here's a note from Dr. Fauci about it. Yeah. Well, that's 15 years old. That doesn't have shit to do with what's happening now.
Dude. So that I think is the most powerful message, is that read about these viruses, read that they have battled them. And a really big tip for people, which I'm finding a lot of people don't do, go and read and look at some stuff on the 1918 outbreak.
Right, and some of the parallels that are...
There's so many parallels. One of them is the masks. People wore masks, and when they didn't, they had outbreaks in those cities. But what's beautiful about 1918 is Bill Gates wasn't alive. Fauci wasn't alive. There's no World Health Organization. You know what I mean? You remove all of this noise.
All the boogeymen.
And you're able to say, you know what? Here were doctors and scientists. They already understood vaccines, right? They were already smallpox was being worked on. Vaccines go back, late 1700s, if I recall correctly. So 1918 is really cool because they knew a lot of modern science and biology, and they really, But coming back to gigs and venues and things, it's going to be problematic for some time. Yeah, even when these venues open up to half capacity or 1/3, how do you manage that economically?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to come of it.
Yeah.
But I pray, I don't know, I pray an answer is found somehow.
Yes, it could go.
I'm sure one will arrive eventually, but.
We got to hope, because they're still looking for an AIDS vaccine, for instance.
Right, yeah. Some things we may just have to learn to live with somehow. And the thought of that is
measles was one of the fastest ones that took about 10 years, and that was remarkable in the history of vaccines.
Yeah, and I don't want to see anybody rush to a vaccine either.
Hello?
It just sounds really dangerous.
Dude, and they are. They are.
It's like, even if it's ready, I don't really want it.
I'm not in the first line.
No way. I tip my hat to the people that are lining up to test.
I know.
And I hope they're around to talk about it in a year.
I know. I haven't read about the details, but I heard that one of these many, many tests going around the planet, one of them has gone pretty badly for the test people. I haven't read the details, but yeah, that's going to happen out of 20 of them or however many it is. That's my other concern. Let's say they come up with it. It's December 1st, which would be absolute record in history to do it that fast. But let's just pretend. Are you going down there on the 2nd to get one?
No, I'm going to stay home till June.
Thank you. But that's a problem, because if we're not all, and then you have the anti-vaxxers and all the deniers. So we have a problem here. This virus is going to be around probably the rest of our lives. The bubonic plague is still around, and 2 people just died in Mongolia from the fucking Black Death, the Black Plague. Right. So we have to adjust our minds, set the controls to the heart of the Twilight Zone, and understand that. I hope we come up with something that's okay. You have this chlorhydroquinone or whatever it's called.
Right.
I'm hoping we come up with something that really does what people think that, you know what I mean? That
right, well, we're still checking, and I think they've discovered that a lot of it has to do with like blood clotting and stuff. So they're realizing it's more of a blood issue than a lung issue.
Yes.
So they're still learning.
Yes, I'm with you. They're going to come up with something.
Will click, and all the pieces will go together, and they'll be like, okay, this is really what you need to head it off at the pass.
Exactly.
Right.
And the kind of thing where you get tested and you have it. Here, take this. This makes it not go bad symptoms. Yeah.
But this just urge to everyone to be right and not open their minds to other options is tiring, and that's putting it mildly.
Absolutely. Understand that, again, they found out about it 260 days ago.
Yeah. So not a lot of time to learn how something
Are you kidding?
acts.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately, it feeds the conspiracy people, because they almost every one of these conspiracy things people send me has somewhere in there they go, well, they said something different in March, so it must be a hoax. And you go, because in March they didn't
know shit.
Well, they knew shit, but they only knew
much.
They only knew 130 days worth of shit.
And that's sort of the nature of science, is it gets revised as you learn.
You need data. Right,
Yeah,
and also what they had in March was anyone who survived it had only survived it for about 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Right? So now in August, now they're able to study people who have had it in January or December. And you learn all this other stuff. So yeah, you're right. It's a moving target.
Yeah, it really is. So I'm just hoping for the best.
That's it, bro. Keep playing some music and staying safe.
That's kind of it's kind of the inspiration for this show. It's like, if I can't get out and play, I'd like to at least talk about it.
And
music. That's something I've loved to do for years anyway.
Likewise, yeah.
Might as well just do it in person. Well,
it's
rather than in writing.
It's been a great return to this all, and that's another thing too. I think it's official. I can announce this too. I have my interviews, which again, guitar tour interview series. People can just check my Facebook or andrechumley.com. But I'm also going to be doing some interviews, and they go up within the next week for Make Weird Music. I'm now part of the Make Weird Music team. Yeah. So I have a bunch of interviews that I can't even announce yet, but some really cool artists. As I said, coming up, the Pat Mastelotto one's going to go up. There's Steve Hunter. There's a bunch of other cool, amazing artists but it's kind of a return for me, because I used to do this in college. I used to write for the college paper.
I was into journalism big time back in my teenage and college years.
Yeah, I could tell. So
I guess it's something I never really got out of. I probably should have just made a career out of it rather than getting sidelined with other things.
No, likewise. And you kind of go, well, all right, let's.
But then again, maybe it's never too late to reinvent myself. Especially when I'm just going to lean towards my passions rather than doing something totally new. It's not really new. I've been talking music online for 20 years.
That's it. That's exactly right. This is progressive ears writ large. And that technology.
Basically, it's kind of a surprise I didn't do this sooner. But the technology is
right
available now. But I would have loved to have chat with people 10 years ago. But
sure.
And I did some. But then you had to go transcribe it and put in HTML, host it on a website, and that's. Still, I don't know. That wasn't really my bag, but just being able to talk one-on-one and immediately watch it, that makes it easier.
It's great.
So, spread the word if you know the kind of guests I like. So
Absolutely, yes. I
a
definitely
few
will
references,
keep
that'd be
doing that.
great, because I'm trying to keep it booked, a month out or more. And
Okay, yeah, no, let's talk.
yeah,
You know,
that'd be great. I'd love that.
on
And
other
I've got a few cool
avenues.
ones trying to come down the pike right now. We'll see what comes of those.
That's awesome.
For now, next week, Chris Myers from Humphreys McGee will be my
That's
guest.
awesome.
And then the
He's my
following
buddy.
week,
Say
we're going
hi.
to talk about progressive ears. And
Oh, great.
Rick Wakeman's going to pop back in at the end of the month, and we're going to talk for
Awesome.
an hour, because last time it was one of those little 20-minute ones.
Right.
And it's like we both agreed, there's more to talk about. So
That's awesome. No, we love the follow-ups.
Yeah, and that new Rick Wakeman album is really awesome. If anybody loves the instrumental side of his stuff like Six Wives or Criminal Record, this is right in that ballpark.
Heard that was great. Haven't heard it yet. I'll have to check that out.
The Red Planet. Yeah, he said he got all these high-res pictures of Mars and gathered them all around his room and was looking at them as he was composing and stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it's just great, just wonderful, the kind of stuff that everybody really loves from Rick, the wailing,
right,
fiery Moog playing.
Come on, bro. That's your
orchestral layers, and his band's great. Lee Pomeroy on bass, and I forget who the drummer is, but he's amazing. So
Molino?
Yeah, highly suggested.
Yeah, I will. No, put that back on the list.
Yeah, check it out.
This is great. Some great people, some great comments.
Yeah.
And we answered that. Yeah, it looks like we hit most of the questions. And
that's good. Well, thank you all for coming by tonight.
Awesome.
I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's always fun to chat with an old friend.
So, absolutely, bro. Yeah. And we'll stay in touch. And people can, like I said, just at Guitar Tour on Instagram and Twitter. And then the one other thing I have is my electronic solo thing. We Are Ants to Them. And that's weareantstoThem.com as the insect. We are ants to them. And it's weird things like this. Yeah, just tripped out Aphex Twin meets Tangerine Dream, but not as good.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what I grew up listening to, all that electronic stuff, Jean-Michel Jarre and everything. But fun, because it's tough to be in a band lately these days because I'm always on tour. It's tough to hold people together, so I've developed like a little solo thing that I can jump on a plane with.
Sure, there you go.
So, yeah. But
all right, well, take care. Stay safe.
See you soon, bro.
Everybody out there, stay safe. You are stronger than you know. Hang in there. And I'll see you guys next week. All right, take care, Andre.
See you soon, man.
Take care. Thanks for coming by.